Everyone, and welcome to the Yone guide, the long-awaited Yone guide. We put a metric ton of effort into this one, being at least 2 months in the works. Tim here did the whole thing with me, put a lot of effort into this one. You might recognize him from the LeBlanc guide we did recently. So Tim, feel free to introduce yourself.
What up, guys? My name is Tim. I'm mysterious.
And Tim here has actually been doing his own YouTube content. He's actually done YouTube content, TikTok content. So I'll put the links in the description below. If you're interested, he gets very in-depth with some very mid-lane centric content. So he's also a mid-lane academy coach. So highly recommend checking out his content. So here we've got two little screenshots. I've been very vocal about this in some of my past guides. I've had miserable learning journeys. When I learned, for example, Kiana for the first time, I think I had a 35% win rate over my first 60 games. And with the help of Tim here, and also we've had Ajax, another Yone player who's Grandmaster / Challenger in NA. Tim, obviously, Grandmaster in EU. With the help of them, they completely reinvented my Yone journey. And this was actually a screenshot of I played on one of my Smurf accounts. Boom, 76% win rate over 29 games, which for me, I was expecting to be at 40%, 35% win rate with Yone. I didn't think I would really click with him. But this was really using what we spoke about in the guide. So hopefully this is a bit of like a sign that this is kind of tested. What's been in this guide has been tested and used on myself as the test dummy. And Tim obviously killing it in solo queue over 83 games, 61% win rate. So you're in good hands. We've applied this stuff. This is stuff that we've done ourselves. And we're actually going to be going through this guide very differently. We're going to go through 3 sections. The beginner slide. So if you're a beginner, you're brand new to Yone, you're in your first 30 games, you're looking for how to get a baseline approach. We're going to kind of divide that up into section 1. Then we've got intermediate players that have, they've got maybe the first few games under their belt, first 30 games, and they're really starting to get into the nitty gritty. That's what we call like that valley of despair, where they've got over the excitement period. They're really getting into the nuts and bolts of things. And then we've got a section at the end towards Yone experts, people that have got that mastery already, and they're looking to just take their Yone to the next level. So without further ado, let's get into this. We're diving into the beginner section with the runes. Runes are pretty straightforward, aren't they, Tim? I mean, they're basically the similar rune pages. You want to walk us through this one?
Yeah, for sure. So usually we run Lethal Tempo into Triumph, some attack speed, and Last Stand. Why do we run this? Well, Yone's abilities cooldown skill with attack speed, hence is why Lethal Tempo is so unbelievably strong. And for the second rune page, we like to take Resolve to increase our laning strength. And it also just, I think in general, is the best second tree out there. So it gives us the most stats for what we can choose.
Well, and ultimately, Yone is all about minimizing early as well, right? Yes. You're getting poked out. We're taking D shield. We're going to go secondary, second wind a lot of the time. We're there to minimize. So there are some small little optimizations. You can go Conqueror into matchups where you're not really getting a lot of auto attacks. So we'll kind of cover this later on, maybe in some of the matchup specifics, like versus Akali and things like that, where you're not really landing as many auto attacks. You're more reliant on landing abilities. Conqueror can be quite good. But I would say 98% of the time you're going to be running Lethal Tempo. I would say the major ones here that we can talk about maybe is like, I guess, Overgrowth, and I would say Bone Plating and Revitalize. I would say these are probably the main ones that you'd be playing around with. So in what situations for you, Tim, do you go second wind versus Bone Plating? And talk about maybe these two as well.
Yeah, so if I'm versus Assassins or really burst-oriented champions, you definitely go for Bone Plating instead of second wind. And I think the bottom tier from the Resolve tree is very interesting. So if the enemies have a lot of CC, we definitely go for Inflation. If we are going to building a lot of lifesteal or shields, then we go for Revitalize. And if we want a general good option and an option that scales very well, we go for Overgrowth. So usually you go for Overgrowth or Inflation, depending on what the game is.
Sometimes I'll say for me, most of the time, I'm just finding myself going Overgrowth second win majority of the time. If you're very greedy and you feel like you can get away with the lane phase, you can go conditioning. But I would say for most beginners, you want to keep it simple and just stick to second wind or Bone Plating.
Yep, exactly.
So this here is the thing that fundamentally, this completely exploded my brain, right? So when I first started playing Yone, I thought, you're building shield bow into IE. I've looked at too many montages. I just view Yone as purely as an assassin, right? So I thought that I viewed Yone very similarly to that of like kind of like a Zed. like a burst-oriented assassin, high burst, pretty, going in. I mean, the advantage being that he's quite non-committal with the E. He likes the side lane, makes picks, very squishy. What I realized over time, thanks to the help of Tim here, is that, there are kind of two opposing identities with Yone, depending on what you build. And the massive theme of this guide is we're going to be talking about how your itemization completely dictates your mindset and completely dictates the way you go about the game, right? So depending on what you build, there are the assassin-style burst-oriented builds with the shield bow, i.e. very squishy. And then there's a more tank-oriented builds where you're more of a fighter, that of maybe like an Aurelia, more bruiser-oriented, you're more durable. You can team fight and side lane. You can make picks, but you can offer also CC and peel and create space for your team. So, one of the key themes of this guide, guys, is really bringing it back to Yone can be a bit of a hybrid. You can be an assassin, you can be a fighter. And this is the way I really want you guys to be thinking about Yone throughout this guide. And it's going to make a lot more sense as we get into the itemization here. And this is where I think a lot of people have been waiting for. What the hell do I build on this champion? So the three key builds that we're going to talk about today. And I would say this is, on a lot of other guides, Tim, we would say, oh, yep, there's like probably one or two builds, and it doesn't really matter which one you build, whether you're Ludens or the Arms. It's kind of whatever. But this is itemization with Yone is, I would say, 70% of the champion. Like if you can itemize properly and you have the correct mindset according to your itemization, you're honestly 70% of the way there.
Yep.
So we're going to start with the El Clasico here, right? This is, I would say, what most people believe Yone is founded upon. Like this is the classic shield bow, IE. So where do you want to start here, Tim?
So I think we start with the core, and we're really going to start with what are we going to do every single game. And that's either going to be D-Shield or Doran's Blade. And most of the games, it's going to be Doran's Shield because of how strong it is and because we as Yone want to minimize the early lane. Most of the time we opt in for Doran's Shield. But if we feel confident or if we're in a matchup where we don't really feel threatened, we can go for Doran's Blade because it scales slightly better.
So you can go Doran's Blade into like very easy matchups, right? Like low range matchups. You can go into like, say, for example, like maybe, what would you say? Maybe like a
Seraphine.
Oh, you're thinking over that Seraphine and stuff like
that.
Yeah,
a Seraphine, she doesn't have enough poke to deal with you. Or we can indeed go into certain
some melee matchups you definitely can because you're not taking as much poke, right? What I would say that was funny, there was Ajax, the other Yone player in the Midland Academy, said this. He says, when you see a Doran's Blade Yone, they are either a complete noob or they are very good. There's no in between, right? So I would say for anyone starting out with Yone, just go D-Shield every game. Don't even think about it. Go D-Shield every game. Don't worry about D-Blade. Later on, when you start to build some more mastery, you're really getting confident with your matchup understanding, your trading patterns, your wave management, then you can start to dabble with D-Blade. But D-Blade is a very high skill cap item. It's very feast or famine is the way I like to view it. So I would say, Berserker Greaves is Yone's #1 spike. I would say basically every lane you're going into, your goal is to get to Berserker Greaves. That's kind of like the sun. Everything revolves around Berserker Greaves. That's when you officially come online. And typically it's quite timed with your 6, right? Level 6, Berserker Greaves, you're online, you're ready to go. And then you've got the TP, Ignite, combat spells here. So how do you want to run through this one, Tim?
So usually you take Teleport as Yone since we want to minimize the early game, and this also allows us to be a bit more efficient in the side lanes. But if we feel confident if we're against a healing champion in mid lane, Ignite is also a very good option to win the 1v1 and get a solo kill to your opponent. But if we're against assassins or champions that have very high threat onto us, Exhaust is a very good option to have that self-peel and allow us to drag ourselves through the early game.
So like things like as a Zed, Kiana, a lot of like burst-oriented assassins, you can definitely go Exhaust. We'll get into this later, but I've also experimented. I've actually found more success with TP into Zed because you get heavy traded and then you can just like play for the wave and then come back and tempo reset with TP. But again, this is getting very matchup specific. But I would say again, when you're a beginner, go TP every game. Straight up. Like legit go TP every game. Keep it very simple. It synergizes beautifully with D-Shield, Second Wind, Overgrowth. It's all about minimizing getting to your key spikes. Okay. Now, the way I want you guys to think about this build is this is, in my opinion, my least favorite build of Yone. And funnily enough, I think a lot of people who learn Yone, they look at this build, they think this is what they should build, and this is actually the hardest to execute build, in my opinion, because you're incredibly squishy. It's obviously what's your shield bow is not a one item spiking item. It's crit. It typically is a 2 item spiking item. Sure, if you can get to shield bow IE, you're off to the races. You're going to be absolutely killing it. But pre these 2 items, you're very unimpactful. And especially nowadays with Serpent's Fang in the game and stuff like that, shield bow isn't really that effective. This is my least favorite build. The only time I'll be building this, we'll get into this in a second, we'll go through some examples, is typically when I need to play for burst. I need to play for the one shot. I need to play for burst, and it's very niche. So this is actually the more niche build, funnily enough, isn't it, Tim? Where majority of the time you'd be going other builds. This is a situational build.
Yeah, it's a pretty situational build, but it does offer some things that the other builds don't offer at certain item spikes, and also ways to play the game, definitely.
And we'll get into this more later. Now, we do need to talk about Zeal for a second.
Yes.
So a lot of people ask us this one.
It's very important to deep dive into Zeal right now, because Zeal is a very gold efficient item on Yone. It's very cheap. It gives crit, it gives attack speed, and it especially gives move speed. So it's very, very good on Yone. It's not the question if we buy Zeal, it's rather the question when we buy Zeal. So there's a few examples where we want to buy Zeal early. A good example is if there's a faster game pace. It allows us to get an earlier spike, but it delays our mythic spike. But it does allow us to go for the skirmishes and have a bit more ease in fighting the skirmishes. Another reason to build Zeal early is if we are snowballing. If we have a lead and we already have a berserkers, we get Zeal on top of that. We're extremely fast. We can crit. We have a lot of attack speed, and it's very hard for the enemies, especially control mages, to deal with this. And another reason to get Zeal early is for move speed. Do we need to kite enemies? Do we need to outer space enemies? Those are the main reasons that we want to get the Zeal early.
Yeah. And I would say here that with this build in particular, you have to go Zeal. I think it's a non-negotiable. Yep. Right? This build, like, I think the other builds we'll go through, sometimes you don't need to build Zeal. This build specifically, you really do need it. It gives you the crit, synergizes really nicely with the shield bow, and it bridges the gap between shield bow and IE. It's actually absolutely essential. But so like Tim said, though, these are the 3 main things, the 3 main situations. When it's a fast-paced game, you need that earlier spike, or when you're snowballing out of control and you can utilize the early spike to get the ball rolling, or like you said, where you really need the MS to avoid skill shots. More often than not, though, I would say you're going to go Berserker Greaves into Zeal, into Shield Bow. Now, without getting too situational, I would argue that if you get say you get Shield Bow, 1100 gold reset, you're on your Doran Shield Bow. You solo kill someone, you get a bunch of waves, you're sitting on 1300 gold. More often than not, you're probably just going to finish your Noon Quiver, and then, in my opinion, and then on the next recall, get Zeal. Because if you can get straight Noon Quiver, some people argue that it could be better. Ultimately, this is preference at the end of the day. But like, again, getting 1300 gold is quite unreliable as well if you're going this build. So that's something to keep in mind. And then it does depend. You might need the lifesteal. Exactly. Right? The Vam Scepter is also very relevant when you're in a poke-oriented matchup, you're getting poked out. So if you need the sustain, you're better off getting the early Vam Scepter. These are all things to consider. Now, typically, rounding out this build, Tim, what would you say here for the 3rd section?
Yeah, so depending on what you need in this game, if you need a bit more damage, you go for bruiserous items. If you need a bit more tankiness, we can go for tank items. We already have a lot of damage in our core build, but we can always have some more, and that's especially needed if we need to burst people. But sometimes we need to survive, and then we can go for straight tank items like Force of Nature or Randuin's or some fire.
Exactly. And you don't typically, if you've got these 2 items, as with the Zeal, you've got so much damage, it's overkill. You're now about survival, and you're in full survival mode. So yeah, typically for me, if I'm going this build path, I find myself defaulting to GA a lot. As a GA for me is like my most common 3rd item when I'm going this build path, but any tank item situational is good. Anything else you want to comment before we move on?
We're going to move on to the next one. Yes.
This one, I need a caveat here. This one, I believe, is the best beginner build. So if you're new to Yone, this is how I learned Yone. So I learned Yone through this build for many reasons. Okay, so number 1, Bork is a 1 item spiking item. right? You don't need 2 items to be impactful. It's a 1 item spiking item. So the great thing about it, especially nowadays, games are relatively fast paced. It allows you to adapt to faster paced games. A lot of the time when I felt like I was rushing shield bow, the games would feel too fast for me. So I feel like it gives you that flexibility. It allows you to be very strong in the early game. The other great thing about this build is that it gives you flexibility. Because you're going crit as your second item, you can then take that into more damage and more crit, right? You can theoretically go more damage after this, or you can say, okay, I got the double healing, just go raw tank, and then I'm super durable with a spirit visage, double lifesteal. It gives me so much flexibility in the way I can take out my build. You can actually even go here, Zeal, Bork, shield bow. You can even go into an IE. You can actually even go IE here as well, just go raw damage. So it depends. It gives you more flexibility based off the composition. So this is for any beginner Yone player. This is the build I would recommend. So this is all pretty straightforward, like we covered before. Typically, I would say that with this setup, I'm probably defaulting to either one of these 2 components, right? First, you're either if you can and you don't need the lifesteal, you go recurve bow for the extra damage and the attack speed. Otherwise, you just get the lifesteal. I think to mention here with Bork, something that I really made a lot of mistakes on with Bork was I didn't auto enough. If you're going Bork, remember, your damage, you must try and get that Bork proc off to get the slow. And the great thing about Bork, the slow, it allows you to follow up and land your Q3 easier. So you E in, get on top of them with the Q autos, you get the slow down. It makes it much easier to land the Q3. Now, let's actually talk about disadvantages here, Tim, about Bork versus shield bow.
Yeah, exactly. So this build has the best side laning of all the builds. It has the most damage, and you're extremely mobile, a lot of attack speed. So this is exactly what you want. But there's also a con, and that is you're extremely squishy. So you got to be very careful with what you do, and you got to avoid super sticky situations and value your life very well in this build.
And also, you got to remember with Bork, you have less burst, right? Because you're obviously you're delaying your crit, right? Because you're not getting crit here from Bork, obviously. So you do more. You need to be in combat for longer. So my biggest advice when you're going for Bork is that really limit test with the Bork with autos. E, auto, Q, auto. Like make sure you're staying in combat, trying to get a lot of value from the Bork. You're less burst oriented with this setup, I would say. But yes, like I said, to round out this build, you're typically, again, if you need damage, you can go IE. But a lot of the time, I'm going straight into a tank item, going straight into a Spirit Visage. Even if you're not even versing that much magic damage, Spirit Visage is still good because the healing, right? And how the healing, increased healing works with the double healing items here. But otherwise, pretty straightforward. Depending on what you need, armor, MR, more bruiser items, whatever, play around with this. So this is very feel-oriented, depending on how much burst you're versing. And we'll get into this later when we go through the examples. Anything else you want to talk about here on this one, Tim?
No, this is perfect.
Moving on. This is the spice, Tim. Lead us through this one.
This is my favorite one. So, especially the last few months, tank Yone has been getting a bit of an uprising after durability update. And this means that we can now use Yone more as a fighter. So certain games, you're going to be borderline useless as burst damage because you already have a lot of damage, enemy have a lot of tanks, and your role might not be to pick people off or to make picks, but it's rather to be a bit more durable and do a bit more overtime damage in team fights and peel your team with the CC that you provide with your Q3 and space that you create. So for those kind of games, this build is the way to go. And this build gives you a lot of upfront damage with the Blade Rune King, which synergizes really well with our kit. And then it gives us tankiness to survive burst, to survive a bit longer in team fights. And that is absolutely everything that we need to play with a team.
So I would say at a very simple level, the way I view it is that this build, ultimately, the way I interpret it, is that it's actually kind of like a it's basically accepting, okay, Yone sucks ass in this game. Yeah. So I'm going to go this gimmicky bullshit build so then I can be relevant. That's essentially when I came into Yone, right? I was thinking, okay, we've got the assassin build, which makes sense. It's very coherent with his identity. And then we've kind of got this bit of a hybrid build, a bit of in between. And then we've got this build. And what I've realized over time playing a lot of Yone is that you actually sometimes just have to build tank because your champion fundamentally won't survive. You got no front line, you're versing very heavy burst. If you try to go any of the other builds, you won't be able to get your damage off. So the way I view this build is it's like, okay, they have too much damage, they have too much burst. I have no other option. Okay, I need to go tank. So there's a few important things here. Zeal is an absolute must, right? With this last build over here, with this shield, with this Bork into IE, Bork into shield, but you actually don't need Zeal.
Yep.
You can go it if you want to, but it's actually a lot of attack speed. You actually don't need it. So it's situational, but again, a lot of the time I won't build Zeal with this particular build path because I have so much attack speed. This build, on the other hand, you need it because you're not getting any more attack speed here. And remember, we want to stay in combat. This enables your damage because you're not really getting much damage from the second item, from the tank item. So I found, for me, I will always go Zeal either before Bork or after Bork here into tank. There are some niche situations where I'll go Bork into tank, then into Zeal if I really need the tankiness now, because I'm like, I can't survive. But you cannot skip Zeal in this build path. Now, in terms of here, we've got Iceborne and then Frostfire, whatever, and then we've got the Juk Show. Now, for me, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I view Iceborne as like if I'm versing heavy armor, because Iceborne it doesn't give you MR anymore like it did before. Hence why it was a bullshit item before it got reworked, because it gave you both armor and MR before. But now if you're versing heavy armor, you go something into Bork, Zeal, into Frostfire, and then you can round that with however you want. If you need more armor, your Randuin, GA, Death Dance, these are all great items. Exactly. Alternatively, you're versing a lot of mixed damage. You go just Juk Show. Synergizes beautifully with staying in combat for a long time. And then again, you can round that out beautifully. Bork, Juk Show, Zeal, depending on what you need. More armor. You can go any of these items. You need more MR. You actually now have the option to go more because you're not going shield bow. And more is actually really, really good. And also to note, guys, Wit's End is actually, it's a bait item on Yone. It's a lot of the time, usually. There are some very niche situations where you'll go it if you're like versing hardcore tank build, tank comps, and you're staying in combat for a very, very long time. More often than not, though, if you need MR, you'd be better off going one of these items.
Yeah, exactly.
More often than not. And then, fill in the gaps with whatever you need. Anything else you want to cover on this one?
Yeah, there's two things that I want to add. So in this build as well, if the situation really provides it, and if in-game you actually think that you need more damage, you can go Zeal into Infinity Edge as well. It gives you enough crit for the Infinity Edge to proc, and even after the tank mythic, it gives you a lot of damage and a lot of sustain.
I would say more often that's quite niche though. Like it is very rare. It's very rare that you'd be going like, because a lot of time if you're building this, you're like, I already have enough damage in my comp. But yeah, that is possible. It is very niche.
It is possible. And the second thing that is very important to note with this build is the way we use our E in this build, and also how we use our R and our W in this build. What we want to do is when we E forward, we want to start with auto attacks and we want to use our W and our R later on in our E duration. Why? Because the Bork doesn't proc the damage on the E. It's only the damage that Yone does, not his items. So if we auto attack first and then use our R later, that means we get more damage because the Bork is damaged on current health. So if you E first, always start with auto attacks and end with an R or end with a W to get that max damage possible.
And also, we'll get into this later, but this build completely changes the way you play team fights. And this is what we're going to talk about later in the mid-game section and team fighting. It's a very different mindset when fighting. So let's actually get into drafts, because this is what people say. What the hell? How do I know what to build in what situations? Right? So before we get into this, again, we really want to make this clear. When you're starting Yone, don't mess around with the builds. I would primarily stick to one build path, at least for the first 20, 30 games. Then and only then will you switch around. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's start with the left-hand side here. So we see a bit of mixed damage, right? We've got some AP. We've got some heavy AD here as well. It's looking like a tank build, isn't it?
It's some heavy burst too. So yeah, we definitely need some tankiness. Otherwise, we cannot exist in this.
How do we play the game? Because we're not gonna. I mean, we don't have barely any peel, right? We've got no very little front line. If we go squishy, we're just going to get absolutely murdered by the Renekton, Diana, and Pike. So this is a game where you are left with no choice. You got to go Bork tank item. You got to go Bork Chuck Show probably, right? Or even Bork. You could an argument could be made Bork Frostfire, whatever, and then maybe get some MR later, depending on who's fed and who's not. If Diana was behind, you could also do that. So that's a tank build. Any other comments on that one?
No, we definitely need the tank build. And this also means that we're a bit less strong in the side lane, and that we should also be very careful with the way we approach fights. We cannot really ult in. We got to be very careful, let them come into us, and then we can strike with our ult afterwards.
Visualize for a second, guys. Imagine you're going full squishy into this build. Who the hell are you going to burst? How are you going to burst? And you're just going to get one tapped. The rest not going to work. So exactly. This one we're versing a Victor. Victor, Diana, double AP mid jungle. A lot of AP on this team, actually. And then you've got kind of got a Trinimir top side. What jumps out to you here, Tim?
Yeah, so what we see here as well is that our team doesn't have a lot of engage options, and that the enemy team is quite squishy. So we don't really need Bork here. We, in my opinion, we rather go for one item spike together with a bit of tankiness, which is shield bow. So I would go shield bow here and into Infinity Edge. It gives us a lot of burst into possibly Kai'Sa, Victor, Diana, and Karma if we catch him with R. And in the side lane, that means if Trinimir jumps onto us, we have a shield, and also if Diana jumps onto us, we have a shield to survive.
I can see that. I can see shield bow into IE working here with Zeal. I would actually go Bork, shield bow, Spirit Visage.
Oh, that's also very good.
That's what I was doing, because I see double AP mid jungle. I see double healing into Spirit Visage being unkillable. So for me personally, that's what I would do. But I think what I've noticed with me, I'm more biased towards Bork. I just love Bork. So like, there's a lot of situations, as we'll see here. Tim and I, like, multiple builds are going to be viable in many games as well, depending on what your preference is, right?
I'm a bit of the old-fashioned Joe. I've been playing this champ for 2 years now.
You're an OG. Yeah, you're an OG. I'm a noob. I'm more of a noob, Yone. Yeah, lovely. They both work. More drafts here. Starting on the left-hand side. Yone into Ziggs. I mean, this to me is by far shield bow IE, right? Like, when I look at this, because you got squishy as hell everywhere. You could actually go. You could go tank. Yeah, you actually can go tank. Yeah. And this one, but yeah, this one again is flexible. But for me, it jumps out to me as like very, very squishy. Fights are probably going to get played incredibly fast. Shield bow into IE makes sense, but tank is also quite good because you're versing pretty high damage, right? With the cards Vlad.
Yeah, exactly. So I would put this on the way that we want to play the game. And if we want to play into the side lane, we go for a bit more side lane oriented build. But if we want to team fight with our team, which is completely possible because we already have a Fiora for the side laning, so we 4-1, and then we can go for a bit more tanky build, and we can peel the Twitch and the Kindred with our CC.
It's interesting how you talk about that, because when I think of items, I just think of like what allows me to fight the best. But you tend to be able to. You're thinking more holistically about how I want to play the map. You're thinking team fights versus side lane. But I'll be honest, like, I feel like if I, like, let's say, for example, I built tank, right? Let's say, for example, I built Bork into Juksho, right? For example, I still feel like I would win the side anyway. I still have the option to play side. That's like, I don't really, and I'm going to always be Vlad on the side with that build anyway. So like, I can win side no matter what build I play for. I think for me, when I think of itemization here, it's like, I can team fight on probably both, and I can probably team side on both. It's more it's more about like how you adapt the way you play the fights with the build, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
And then we've got this one here on the right-hand side. Yone versus Rise Jarvan. A little bit quite tanky here with the Sejuani. We've got plenty of front line. We don't have a lot of burst, I would say, right? Let's say we're a lot of sustained damage. So what jumps out to you here, Tim?
So we instantly see the enemies are quite tanky. There's few health stackers. Enemy top side, including Rise, a lot of health. That means we basically got to go Bork to deal damage to these guys. But we do lack some burst, and I think this game we're going to be extremely, extremely strong in the side lane. So I would go into Bork, shield bow, IE in this game, and do the most damage possible.
Yep,
Yep.
This is a really good Bork Shilbo game. It gives you flexibility aside, gives you that combination of damage and tank shred with the Bork. I think it's the perfect build here. And then
Yep.
you can round out your build depending on who's fed. If they have if the Rise is behind, maybe go into more armor items. If they're Caitlyn's behind, you go into more MR items depending on what you need.
Yep, exactly.
More drafts here. I think it's very good that we're doing a lot of drafts here because
Yeah.
again, people have asked us many, many times. This is what I spend 90% of my Yone questions asking. Like, what do I build here, Curtis? Yone into, again, a lot of AP, Rumble and Mordekaiser. River top, a lot of damage here.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you can approach this multiple ways. I think Bork in general is very good here. Bork into Shield Bow into Spirit Visage because they got a lot of AP. But I think we can also go for a bit more tanky. I do think it's less effective. So I would personally go for Bork into Shield Bow.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the two builds are viable. I think Shield Bow IE is definitely not an option.
No.
Bork Shilbo definitely good. This game, Bork Shilbo Spirit Visage is insane. This game, I think. I think Bork tank can work, but in order for the reason I'm a bit iffy on the Bork tank build is that you might be lacking damage with like the Nidalee Sejuani, you know. So it just depends. I think if you're snowballing, you could probably get away with tank, but if you're not, if the game's even, I would prefer to go Bork Shilbo that game.
Yep, sure.
And then we've got this one, okay, Ari Grays, a bit of a tough mid jungle. What jumps out to you here, Tim?
So they've got a lot of burst and a lot of damage. This is a very, very, very tough Yone game.
Yeah, and a lot of CC, peeling, split damage.
Anti-out attack from Nyla. A lot of
Nyla,
armor,
yeah. Nyla's a pain in the ass for Yone as well because he mitigates a lot of the burst. This is a hard ass game, yeah.
Yep, exactly. And I think we got a full-on commit on the side lane in this game. I think this is where we have our window versus the enemy team, and if we're able to beat Aatrox in the 1v1 in the side lane, I think we can win the game through the side lane. I would not dare to play this game through team fighting because our only really good team fighting tool is Fiddle R, and it's always kind of inconsistent.
They're just going to kite the barriers so hard. It's really, really hard.
Yep.
So
I would
you're saying, what would you go?
Bork Shilbo. We need as much damage as possible.
Yeah, I agree. Bork Shilbo. You're not going to have enough damage if you go tank build this game.
Yep.
And you can't get away with Shilbo IE because there's no way you're going to burst that team. So yeah, you've only left with one option really. Just by the process of deduction, you have to go Bork Shilbo that game.
Yep, exactly. So uptime and downtime is a concept that was introduced by an Aurelia player in the mid lane academy. And uptime is basically the time that we spend in the lane while having threat upon our opponents, and downtime is the time that we spend in the lane where we're not in a good position to have threat on our opponents. Let's jump into example.
So uptime, downtime, for those of you who are already a little bit confused, essentially is a really basic framework for people to really think about trading. So if you're new to Yone and you don't really know even where to start with Yone, this is a really good baseline framework to get you thinking, okay, this is what a good trade or a good situation for Yone looks like, and this is what a bad situation for Yone looks like. So Tim here is going to walk us through what this looks like with actual some clips.
Exactly. So what we see here is we're of course full HP. We're looking to trade. Taliyah is a pretty weak laner. And what we can see is we have the wave nicely on our side. It's Taliyah has to walk up into the lane to get this wave out. And that's exactly what we want because we can use this long lane to trade onto her. So what are the things that we're looking for? We're looking with our E and we're looking with our Q3 especially to start taking these trades. And we try to keep the wave in this position. So we keep trying to have this threat onto this Taliyah. That means that we stay in uptime and we're basically in a very good spot.
And this is all uptime. So we know it's uptime because the wave state's in a good position. When the wave state's in a good position, we know that we're maximizing our threat or the amount of time in the lane where we have threat on our opponents.
Yep, exactly. And we see that Taliyah, she really struggles in a situation like this. Well, we still have a potion. We're very happy. And it's a very good situation. So now let's take a look at downtime. Downtime is the exact opposite of uptime. We're not able to take good trades. and we're in a very awkward situation. We'll lose HP. We basically have no threat onto our opponent, and that's exactly what we see here. We push the wave, and while we try to trade, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And this is what will get me anywhere like this. And this, I remember this was actually from someone in the MLA sent us this clip, this VOD, and we're like, why are we shoving this? Like, he could have gone, if you go back, he could have just let that wave come out off the tower and just let it come out to him, bring it back onto him. And he's like, no, but I'm shoving for quote unquote prio. Prio ruins your ability to trade. So even though he's quote unquote getting prio, it's actually ruining your ability to trade and win trades into the enemy. So it's actually over time a net negative. So if we're talking purely from a trading perspective, this is not good. And this is what we call downtime. So a lot of beginner Yones make this mistake. All right, guys. So we're on to the matchup tier list. We're not going to go through each and every matchup. What we're going to talk about is basically what does an easy matchup look like. We're going to talk about what it means for a champion to be in each of these categories. So, Tim, what does it mean for a champion to be, say, in the game-dependent category?
Yeah, so the game-dependent is, as we say, game-dependent. It depends on the junglers, on the way, on how good that the opponents are, on how good that we are. And it's basically a skill check, and it involves other factors.
Even like game pace, the elo you're playing, those games, like a lot of these champions, for example, if you're playing versus Victor in, say, gold and plat and even low diamond, like D4, the Victor's probably going to struggle, right? The Victors are not going to be mechanically intense enough to be able to deal with Yone. They're going to miss tether. They're going to give you E into Q3 angles. They're going to mismanage the wave. They're going to overstay. They're going to itemize and all do everything wrong. They're just going to die, right? But when you verse very, very good Victors, when you're versing like GM challenge Victors that have very good micro, that matchup like out of nowhere will become quite difficult. And so the same goes for a lot of these matchups like Silas, a good Silas that knows how to go W max and stand their ground into can be quite annoying. And they win that war of attrition in a way. So yeah, these are the very situational, depend on the elo you're in, depend on the game state, the junglers, etc. I would say favorable matchups, I mean, you're just going to slowly chip them down and win. They don't really have much threat onto you. And a lot of these champions, you can kind of outplay their CC, right, with the Zoe bubble. And look, again, I would say the only iffy one here is Kassadin. Kassadin isn't as easy as I thought. Me and you had a discussion about this. Look, I think a good Kassadin can actually stand their ground, especially nowadays with the buffs to the E and stuff like that. It can be a little bit annoying. I would potentially even going back over this, I'd probably even maybe move Kassadin to game dependent. Kassadin I thought was easy, but it's actually not that easy. But these are champions where you can't maybe stomp, but you definitely have the pressure. You have the agency. You kind of have control over the lane. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. Yep. You have the control. You can decide most of the trading patterns, and it's therefore in your favor.
And then we have like easy, you basically have solo kill threat on them whenever you want. At post 6, they're just dead. And then we have these ones. These are the interesting ones. So what I mean, when I think of unfavorable, it doesn't mean they can kill you. What it does mean is that they can neutralize you and they can make it difficult for you to CS. So, for example, a great Ari or a great Syndra, both of these champions can hold their CC abilities like an Ari Charm or a Syndra E. They can make it very hard for you to trade onto them. They neutralize you. They poke you out. They're definitely not going to kill you, but they will make your life miserable, and they'll make it such you're always reacting to waves. And that is very unfavorable, especially in high elo games where prio matters and a good Ari, they're going to impact the map. It's quite miserable. So a lot of these matchups, they won't kill you, but you can't kill them, and they will have pressure on you. Anything else you would add to this category?
Yeah, so the reason why these are really unfavorable is because we cannot find reliable trade windows into them. They have either CC, dashes, or too much damage for us to really go into them, and that makes it very hard for us to play the game because that's what we want as Yone.
And then we have the hard ones. And then these are ones that, they basically can zone you. They can 100 to 0 you. They make your life absolutely miserable. I mean, the highlights one, like Zed, really hard matchup. I severely underestimate. A good Zed who knows how to play off the spikes makes your life miserable. Renekton, borderline unplayable if they play the waves properly. I'd say that's basically a no counterplay matchup if they play it well. Kali, obviously, you're very auto attack based. The Kali, really makes it quite difficult. And she can always use your E reactively to your combo, so she completely neutralizes you. And if she manages the way as well, post 6, she can have a lot of threat on you down the long lane. as well, because you don't get any render resistances or any tankiness in the early game. A lot of these champions, you've got to remember, guys, Yone can't build Tabis. You can't build steel caps. So a lot of these lethality champions, like the Pantheons and the Zeds and the Renekton's and stuff like that, you can't build early armor without completely ruining your spikes and your Berserker spikes. And a lot of the time you're having to rush Vamp Scepter. So then you don't have attack speed. So there are ways around these. Like you can go cloth armor start in some of these, going TP or exhaust and things like that. But yes, these are definitely the trickiest matchups, and they have genuine solo kill threat onto you. All right, so we're getting into how we can navigate the wide variety of matchups. And since we're in the beginner section, we're going to try and keep it nice and simple. We're going to focus on breaking down or categorizing roughly how the matchup should play out. So this is a nice little graph here. We've got range, we've got pressure. Really simplifying it, we like to think of matchups in 4 categories: hard counter melees, skill melee matchups, very back and forth ones, high cooldown mages, low cooldown mages. So these ones on the top left are the hardest counters, right? You're embedded here. You've also got champs like Pantheon, Renekton, really, really annoying champions. These ones on the bottom left are a little bit more complicated. They're not straight up losing. They're not straight up winning. And so you've got to be very creative with your ability usage. These are a little bit more straightforward. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through a few examples, taking bits and pieces from each of these categories to give you guys a rough framework, a starting point, so you can navigate your matchups. Let's dive in. So we're going to start with the low cooldown mages. Now, this was versus, I would say, not a very high elo Victor. He wasn't a very aggressive Victor. I think he was only maybe low diamond or something like that. And basically, though, my mindset when I'm versing a low cooldown mage is I want the wave on my side. I want the wave on my side. I want to create the long lane state, creating uptime like we've mentioned in this guide thus far. So I can take those level 3 QE, Q3 trades, keep myself nice and safe, force him to be overextended. So as you can see here, I mean, I probably could have also stacked my Q level 1, but the Lilia started Raptors, so it was a little bit more complicated. I couldn't do that. But right now I'm trying to last hit, essentially, allow this Victor to shove me in, trying to thin it so I can keep the wave in a nice little pocket. Here I try to take aggro, just so he can take the minion aggro, the minion damage. So then now it guarantees shoving to me. And so I'm just thinning it a little bit so it doesn't get too big. So he's autoing the wave a lot. But again, my mindset is keep it simple, stay healthy, keep the wave on my side, rinse, repeat. So we'll kind of skim through this to keep it nice and simple here. Thinning the wave, and now look at this. Beautiful lane positioning. Tethering out a little bit, thinning the waves when I can, trying to posture aggressively just so I can kind of use the threat of the Q3 to scare him off. But you can tell this Victor's very defensive, giving me complete freedom. And I would say this is typically how the matchup would play out in the lower elo brackets, maybe like gold and platinum. Once you start to verse a bit better Victors, they might start to posture a little bit aggressively. And we'll talk about how this matchup can be played up differently later on in the guide. But for the most part, this is still the exact same strategy that you're going to be going. Now I've got my level 3. We can take a look at here, by the way, this level 3 trade. Try to actually time it with the last hit on the cannon so he's incentivized to walk up so I can guarantee my Q3 hit there. So I'm able to take a nice little short trade. Boom, pop back, come back. So now all I'm doing is thinning, holding, staying healthy, and this is going to make this Victor's life very miserable. So we fast forward, it's basically rinse, repeat, stacking my Q3, making sure that I'm not over shoving. Now, if the wave does shove, maybe because I AoE it, or he stops thinning it, or the wave starts to slow build out, now my mindset is, oh shit, I don't want the wave to ever be frozen on Victor's side. So what do? If the wave's shoving, I have to commit to the hard shove into a tempo reset. I can't poke under tower. So I have to recognize all the way back here. As soon as I notice at this point, the wave shoving here, I've got to be like, okay, I can't poke under tower. I have to use this as my opportunity, my high wave clear to get the wave out, get it back on my side. So I use this as an opportunity to shove. You see, I immediately start hard shoving here. I'm not just last hitting, AoE the entirety of the wave, take a little bit of damage. I'm not too scared here because I know I can't die. And this gives me a beautiful tempo reset window. Excellent. Come back, base on a cannon. Again, wave on my side. Really, really simple. Rinse, repeat. Trying to keep getting the wave on my side. Keep getting the wave on my side. Now, here I think I made a little bit of a mistake. I think I over-thin here. Yeah, I over-thin here. I think I AoE this. This was this was an overcommitment in my opinion. And then I go for an EQ, sorry. This trade is fine, but it shouldn't have hit the wave. because look what I've done here. I've ruined the wave state. And again, when I'm versing these mages, I want the wave on my side. So as a result, because I screwed the wave here, that's my mistake, I now have to commit to the shove. So I commit to the shove into another tempo reset. There's no point me staying under tower and poking. I'm always, priority number one is with Yone, and this is the key themes you're going to hear. Wave over trades. Wave state is more important than trades. And number two, ensuring that I'm getting good, always thinking about how I'm going to get a good quality reset. And number three, thinking about my key spikes, my Berserker Greaves, my Zeal, my VAM sets, or whatever the hell it might be. And now wave comes in again. I'm able to go for an EQ trade to pull the wave again. Beautiful wave in an excellent location. I ping that I've got the long lane state. I stack up my Q3. And here I just go for I know I probably couldn't kill the Victor, but I just wanted to chunk and get a really good trade anyway. And then we end up burning the flash. Excellent. And now it's very straightforward from this point. So as you can see, a relatively simple matchup. All it takes is being decisive about your resets, wave management, and trading patterns.
All right, so now we're playing against even more scaling, high cooldown control mage. And this one is very similar as the Victor one. We want to minimize level 1, 2, and we really want to start trading with, on this Seraph aggressively once we're level 3 with our E and with our Q3. So our goal in this lane as well is to create uptime as soon as possible and get chipping at Seraph's HP bar. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we let the wave crash, and Seraph is already pushing the third wave, so this is perfect. So we're going to reach level 3 right now, and we also get ganked, luckily. That means we can get an amazing trade onto the Seraph, and we can really pressure him in the lane. And that's also.
And now that Zerath's actually burned flash, that also is going to make it such that your conservative wave states on, if you hold the wave on your side, you're going to be able to punish that really, really, really hard.
Yep, exactly. And that's the mindset that I want you to have in these kind of lanes. When we play against a very weak early game champion, I want you to have the mindset to start really putting pressure on them post level 3. So in this example, we opt them for a nice tempo reset. We make sure that we shove and crash the wave. We come back with a curl, and we actually try to hold it. We could have used E here to actually freeze the wave. Right now, it will just be staying on our side for a little bit. Surface basing, and because he has no flash, he's got to be very, very respectful from us. So he's probably staying on the long lane right now. And once he comes back, he will try to CS. He hit his Q onto the minions, and now it's actually frozen on our side. And from this time, we can have permanent uptime. So what we'll do is every single time we have got E, Q3, we will take these kind of trades onto the Seraph. And because he had no flash, there's nothing much for him to do. And he's got to be super respectful right now. And the next time we have E, we can basically kill him.
And notice how as well, when you hold the wave here, the more they use abilities to CS, the more it's going to keep the wave here. So it is just a never-ending cycle of pressure. So all you got to do is just consistently play off your E cooldown, fish for those E into Q3s, and there's not really much they can do.
Yep.
Exactly. And notice that you don't have as much creativity in your trading patterns in these high range matchups because you have to basically into Q3. But when you're versing lower mid-range matchups, you can do those E into Q1s or E into Q2s type thing. So in this matchup, in these matchups, you've got to be, it's pretty boring, straightforward, honestly. These are like the easiest sorts of matchups.
Yep, exactly. And what we see right now is Seraph is down like 20 sets already, 2 levels. So it's basically GG. So moving on to the next group of matchups, and these are the hard counter assassins. So the mindset that I want you to have in these kind of lanes is that we got to minimize and play towards our spikes. So the way we do that is by getting the wave on our side as soon as possible. And we also want to use our ability, especially our E, but also our W. Our ability usage has to be reactive to make sure that we are able to minimize.
Yeah, so to jump in here, one of the key mistakes I see in the MLA with clients is that in these hard matchups, whether it's like Pantheon, Akali, Zed, whatever, they're getting in that habit of like, oh, I'm Yone, I should E into Q3. Then before they know it, the Akali just uses E reactively, they just get completely chunked, and then they're screwed. So It's very important that you're more reactive with your ability usage.
Yep, exactly. So in this game, this is a pretty specific example, but my mindset here is to get the wave on my side as soon as possible. I do this by having a bit more wave clear than Akali and getting the shove, make sure that I stack and crash on wave 3, so that after this wave, it bounces out and I can actually try to hold the wave on my side.
And this is more of a high skill cap style. Like, I think for a lot of lower elo Yones, if you're in gold and platinum, I would recommend just letting the Akali shove you in from level 1, because a lot of the time you're just going to AoE the wave. When you're a little bit more high level, maybe you're high diamond master plus, you can do something like Tim did here, which is kind of like a shove early into a shove into a bounce. So ultimately, just keep it simple, though, if you're in those lower elo brackets. So the last thing before we move on to the next category of matchup, guys, is that in these matchups, the reason Akali and Zed and a lot of these champions is so good is that they look, the levels 1 to 6 won't be that bad. It's when they hit 6, that's when they turn really bad. Because remember, Yone has to build Berserker Greaves. So, what happens? A good Akali, they're going to go for like an early Sorks, or you're versing a Zed, they're going to go for an early Dirk. You're going to be in a long lane, they're going to shove and bounce. And that's where you start to get very vulnerable. So that's why, guys, you've got to be very creative in finding ways to get the wave on your side. If the wave is on your side and say you're versing a Zed, it's going to be a lot harder for Zed to WEQ you, because then he's exposed to junglers. So the key to success is, like Tim said, hold the wave on your side by any means possible. All right, so now we've got the final category of matchup, guys. And this one's a little bit more complicated. So this is, the Yasuos, Kianas, Silas's. And look, guys, unfortunately, there's no general rule of thumb for this one. They're all case-by-case basis. The way you play the Kiana matchup is slightly different to the Sylas. The way you play the Sylas is slightly different to the Yasuo. And there is no rule of thumb such as, just hold the wave on your side and use E into Q3. You got to get it's case-by-case basis. So if we're talking about the Yasuo matchup, for example, you kind of lose levels 1 to 3. You have a little bit more trading flexibility at level 4. You can actually kind of stand your ground and get creative with your trading patterns pro 6, because you can actually avoid his Q3 quite well. But yes, in the early game, levels 1 to 3, Yasuo kind of stat checks. The mindset that I want you guys to have heading into these matchups is that it's all about punishing cooldowns. If you see the Kiana use abilities on the wave, punish with an E into Q. If you see the Yasuo have the wave in a bad spot like this, and you see them waste abilities on the wave, look for a nice little short trade. But the key to success is getting specific, case-by-case basis, being very curious about the trading patterns, and over time, slowly fleshing out your matchup understanding. So for me, guys, heading into a lot of these matchups, I would recommend starting with a basic, baseline hypothesis, such as, all right, I'm going to play around with holding the wave on my side, get to level 3, then start experimenting with trading patterns. I did a review recently with someone who didn't know the Talon matchup, and I said, look, if you're ever unsure, go in, hold the wave at level 3, try a trade at level 3, see what happens. And then he realized in the game, oh, okay, if I actually wait for Talon to use W on the wave, then I can punish with an E into Q while that's on cooldown, and then I can actually take some okay trades. But where that initially started was that he EQ'd into a Talon with W up, and he just got completely annihilated because Talon was able to land the passive. So as you can see here, the key is, again, the try to true. You don't want the wave stuck on Yasuo's side. You want to always thinking about your resets, especially if you don't have TP and you don't have D shield. But it's more focused on creative trading patterns, opportunistic, sometimes reactive, sometimes proactive. So that's what I'll leave it with, guys. You play around with this. This is going to be a long-term project. And for you guys, and these matchups are not simple. So even look at this. He did like an opportunistic trade because he knows there wasn't many minions. So he could look for that opportunistic trade. But now he's exposed and he doesn't have his E. And maybe he feels with this situation. Viego was exerting pressure so Yasuo couldn't posture up. It's very complicated. So to keep it simple, conservative wave states, get case-by-case specific. So now we're getting into the Yone journey. Right, and this is actually, you pulled this, Tim, from, was this League of Graphs?
League of Graphs, exactly.
And this is scary, how accurate this is. This is genuinely scary. We talk about always the first 15 to 20 games, you have a lot of fun. You're having a blast. You're playing with free flow mentality. You've got no expectations. And then what we have in the middle is the Valley of Despair. This is where shit starts to get very real, very quick. The fun's worn off. You're starting to have to get into the details. You're limit testing a little bit more. You're starting to be more conscious of what you're doing. And this is where the win rate will drop. You will struggle down this next 20 to, usually I would say it's around, for me, more game 15 to game like 60, roughly-ish. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it's very goddamn close, 20 to 50. You start to spike up. You start to make sense with things. And then again, you're slowly making your way back up, really kind of getting specific, replicating things. So we've got the beginner stage, the intermediate stage, and the advanced stage. So this is a really good framework. Was there anything here that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, so this is something that we also try to incorporate in the stages that we use to explain this Yone journey. And this is why we have the beginner, intermediate, and the expert stage. We kind of made it a bit more lengthy to make it a bit more graspable for everyone doing this journey. But this is the basic premise behind it, and you can always refer back to this.
And 80 games is generally when the champion starts to click for most people. I would say about 80 games is when you're like, okay, I'm starting to be very consistent. So, I'm very passionate about this. Me and Tim have seen this a lot inside the MLA. So, this is the difficult thing about Yone, guys. You need to limit test to see what the champion is capable of doing. But you need to wrestle with the idea that one single death changes the entire trajectory of the game. And right, this is the hard thing, right? Because you'll hear from me and Tim throughout this guide. One death, well, you're screwed, right? Because you provide very little utility. You're a melee champion. You're super reliant on controlling wave states and your items. One death, as a lot of you who've already started to play Yone have found out, changes the entire game. But it's inevitable. There is no way around this, guys. So what we need to do is we need to do what I call oscillate between two phases. We have the conservative phase, and we have the limit testing phase. So essentially, the limit testing phase is where you're playing very fast and aggressive. If you're unsure, you do it. If you think you can win it, do it. If you think you can go for the kill, do it. If you think you can get the kill, even though it's not on a spike, or you think you can go for that risky solo kill without knowing where the jungler is, just do it. Limit test, limit test, limit test. Your goal when you're in the limit testing phase is to see what the champion is like in terms of damage output, how much damage you can take, damage input, obviously, but also what it feels like to play the champion fast, not necessarily on spikes, not necessarily off your R cooldown, all this sorts of thing. Then, after about 15 games of doing that, you slow it the hell down. We go into the conservative phase. We say, okay, what does it feel like to not die for the first 15 minutes of the game? What does it feel like just to play with my Zerka Greaves, my Bork, my Zeal, my shield bow? What does it feel like to get to my item spikes without dying? What does it feel like to play off my R cooldown? What does it feel like to be hyper conservative with my wave states? Say no to risky plays. And then all you're doing, guys, throughout your learning journey is you're bouncing between two. Limit test, conservative. Limit test, conservative. I personally, on my Yone journey, oscillated about every 15 or so games. This way, over time, by the time you get to around 50, game 60 onwards, you'll be able to find that beautiful middle point. You'll know when you can limit test. You know where you have to play conservative. That is what leads to consistency on Yone. Absolutely crucial. Okay. Yeah. Now, if you guys, so what I want to say here, if you want to nerd out and you want to know a little bit more about the learning journey, I'm going to go over this a little bit more in detail over the next 2 or 3 slides. If you're okay with this and this is all you want to know, skip over the next few slides and come back to us in the intermediate section. But if you're a beginner and really want to know more about the learning journey, stick with me for the next 5 or so minutes. So we're going to be talking about the Dreyfus model of skill acquisition, and we're going to use the Yone journey to describe what this is like, right? So essentially, right, the way this kind of model works is that it's like kind of like 5 stages. We have novice, advanced beginner, competent, proficient, expert. I actually talk about this on a recent Broken by Concept episode. If you're interested, check out Broken by Concept podcast. But essentially, when you're a beginner, what I would recommend to Yone players is just blindly follow rules. Try to use your E with Q3. Hold the wave on your side using the uptime model. Play off your key spikes like your Berserker Greaves, Bork, etc. Don't make aggressive plays with your R. Simply stay alive. These are like basic framework that I would recommend if you're a beginner. Then, once you get those 20, 25 games under your belt, you start to test the rules. You're in the calibration phase. Use your E more creatively with Q1, Q2. Try not to hold waves. Try a little bit, play what Tim did into the Galio. Play for shove a lot more. Don't play on only your spikes. Play on maybe your Berserker Greaves and Vam Scepter. Play super fast and aggressively, maybe not so much valuing your life. See what it feels like, and what your goal here is to see why these rules exist. Why are we saying that these things are so important? You'll start to realize, oh shit, Curtis is actually right by, Tim and Curtis are right by saying hold the wave on your side. Tim and Curtis are actually right when you say, okay, these items are actually pretty bloody important. We're not just, spewing shit out of our ass. So
we're always right.
Yeah. And we're just slowly starting to realize, okay, You do this for a little bit, doing this for another 20, 30 games, and then we start to get to the level 3, competent. This is where we can start to apply those rules very reliably. And this, guys, is where most people get to. A lot of people don't get past this point. They will be able to just do the bare minimum. They'll know how to hold waves and why it's good. They'll know how to play off spikes and why that's good. They'll know the importance of key spikes and how to stay alive. They'll just do the basics of Yone. This will get you to like maybe high plat, right? But if you only stay here, you won't push your limits. You won't know what it feels like to do these things. You're relying on logic rather than feeling, and you'll miss that intuitive part. So if you keep going, you keep pushing yourself, you keep being very curious, you keep exploring, we'll get to level 4, which is we're slowly starting to see the solutions without even thinking. You're not fully playing with instincts yet, but you're starting to go a bit deeper, study specifics, you're analyzing situations, you're starting to get a hold of what the Yone mindset is, how to think as Yone becomes really relevant. And this is when you're getting intermediate to expert. We're slowly getting there, and you're starting to play with more intuition. This is when you see, for example, Zeal or Way of the Tempest guy or Zhang. They're actually making decisions not in rules at all. They're purely thinking in terms of feel. They know what it feels like to make the best decisions, and they don't even think about that. They're just doing it because they know they are one with the champion. And that's what happens when you get to expert. There is no thinking and rules anymore. You just do it because you are the champion. Everything is pure intuition. I don't think I should hold this because I'm a Yone and Charlie. Tim and Curtis said, uptime, downtime. I just do that because I know intuitively that's what's going to lead to good trades. I know how I should play that team fight because I feel it. And so this is basically what the learning journey is going to look like. So for the most part, guys, at the start, you're going to be in here. This is for the first maybe 30, 40 games. Slowly, we're going to get into here. 30, 40, 50 games. This is where a lot of people are. I'm only here, I would say, stage 4. I'm nowhere near stage 5 yet. I'm in here. And this is where I would say I'm starting to get some instincts. I'm starting to feel out the games a little bit more. I'm not playing with pure instinct, but I'm not playing with pure logic. And I'm like 60, 70 games deep at this stage. And then as 80 plus, right? When you start to Tim's level, you're on hundreds of games deep. That's where we're no longer thinking of rules. We just play. We know what the right thing is to do. So if you have any questions about this, let me know. We go deeper on this one of the recent PPC episodes. But it's a great framework to think about the learning journey.
Now we're done with the beginner stuff, and we're going to move on to the intermediate phase of Yone. And that means that we're going to jump straight into ability usage. We're going to get down to the very details, and we're going to make sure that we use our abilities correctly. And we've got some examples with that, so we're going to jump straight into that. The first one, very nice trick on Yone, is to stack our Q preemptively on the Raptors, and then use that in lane to get a slight advantage onto our lane opponent, and basically get the first 3 CS for free if we're against a ranged champion. So that's
quite important. That's quite important when you're versing like hardcore lane bullies level 1. What I would recommend, by the way, is it takes time to get used to the angle, like on the Raptor wall. Like sometimes it's not what you think it would be. So play around that in practice. Or the other thing, the timing. So this actually looks simple, but the timing's not that simple, because a lot of the time what will happen is that you'll stack your Q3 too early, and then your Q3 will expire before the minions get low. So again, you guys are going to have to play around with the timing there to get a feel for that, because it really depends on how fast they're shoving as well. So there's something to keep in mind.
We got the Q3 and flash. So Yone's Q3 is, of course, a dash and a projectile. And we can alter the trajectory of this projectile while flashing after casting it like this. So we can either extend the range and use it after casting to make it very quick for the enemies. And
so that's more of like a flash Q3. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And we can also use it to literally change the directory from one way to another way, and maybe follow a flash from an enemy that way, like this.
So there's a few little things here that I found doing this. So number one, with Q3 flash, it's easy to do like the Q3 flash sidewards, right? So like in this case, right? So you notice how you, and not this one, the one after, how you Q3 flash like kind of horizontally.
Yep.
But when you're doing it vertically, it's very, very difficult. So let's say, for example, you were trying to Q3 flash to someone behind, right? Let's say there was like that first target dummy, and then you wanted to hit you wanted to like hit someone further away, kind of Q3 flash vertically, it's actually very difficult. It's very, very hard to do. The timing needs to be super, super on point. So I think if you're even an intermediate player, I wouldn't Q3 flash vertically. I would only do these more horizontal Q3 flashes, if that makes sense. It doesn't really work that well vertically. I've seen it very rarely. I see Zeal do it occasionally, but it's very hard to do.
You got to be very good to get that consistently good in the
Yes,
in the right spot.
consistently is hard. But the normal Q3 flash like this, when it's horizontal, it's pretty simple.
But definitely play around with it in practice tool and maybe grab some muscle memory for it, and maybe you can use it in a nice scenario. All right. So one more thing about our Q3. Our Q3 has a cast time. So what we can do is we can cast it while we're getting CC'd. And into situations like these, we can basically use it as an escape. Same premise with, for example, Renekton W. We can cast it in the CC, and it's very hard for the enemies to reach us after that or kill us in any kind of way. Another thing that we can do is we can actually Q3 into E. And that gives us the instant the instant E proc, so it deals more damage, and we get closer to the enemies and have a longer E duration. So this can be very useful if we're already in Q3 range of the enemies and want the additional damage for our E.
And that seems like a pretty bread and butter trading pattern for lane phase as well.
The Q3 into R. So that's a pretty stock standard combo when we want to CC someone, but it can go wrong. And the way it can go wrong is especially against champs with flash or with dashes up. So the way we can basically confirm it landing is by doing it from long range. So if we do it from long range like this, they cannot dodge it. But if we do it from short range, like in these scenarios, there's just that slight timing where they can either teleport or dash or flash out. And we got to be very, very careful with that, because some people might get surprised thinking that they perma CC someone, but there's actually a slight timing.
So why is that? Why is it that at low range they land on the ground and can flash, and why is it at long range they can't?
Because of our cast time of the Q3.
Okay.
We're still in the Q3 dash before we can press R.
Right. Okay.
Right,
okay.
you're already out of it.
You're already out of the dash, so there's no that buffer. Yeah. Because then you have to kind of wait for it. Yeah. You have to wait for the Q3 to finish, essentially.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is, of course, we got to keep a Q stacked all the time if we have the possibility. And we also want to keep minions alive and calculate our minions that way, that we actually keep our Q stacked. So I leave both of these minions alive. And because I have my Q stacked right here, I basically get a free pick onto the Caitlyn. So to rewind,
that's actually massive. This is something that it took me a long time to understand. And you described it beautifully, where whether you're stacking it off jungle camps, whether you're stacking it off minions, don't rush to hard shove minions all the time. Because again, when you have your Q3 available, you actually have threat. When you don't have your Q3 available, you can't just ER someone, right? You need to, this is the only way you're going to land that damage off. So yeah, this is a very, very high skill cap thing. And this is, I would say, especially important in the mid game when you're looking for picks. So this is something we'll probably even talk about later on in the mid game section.
Exactly. All right, moving on. Same as stacking queues of minions, we can also stack queues on objectives. And that's what I'm doing right here. Especially in these objectives, people will usually contest, and that way we can get a very good pick or a very good engage onto the enemy opponents by just stacking our Q and using our E to get over the wall, be very non-committal, and get a beautiful play going on. Yeah,
this is very important around Barons, especially. Like I would say, Yone is one of the best gem. He's a defending Baron with the E into Q3 over the wall.
Yep, exactly. And this one is also very important, and this is an extremely high skill cap thing, and that is Q3ing at the end of our E duration. So what this does is it actually gives us an additional auto attack at the end of our E. So this increases our damage. So if we're going to look closely right here, I keep my Q3 for the end of the duration. And if we look closely, we can see me actually throw an additional auto attack at the end because we're still in the Q3 animation, but we can auto attack. And that means that we get that additional damage. And that's sometimes just enough to get the kill. And
that's very important when you're going bulk. If you're going the bulk build, those additional autos matter a lot. Yeah, exactly. Very, very important.
A nice little trick as well is Eing next to walls. The way we do this is we stack our Q, we E next to walls, and we go back and we instantly have an escape, and people usually cannot follow us.
So that's a good way to go for like short non-committal trades. You're looking for a non-committal trade. You feel like they might be able to chase you on the back end, stack your Q3, then Q3 out. Yeah, it's really nice.
Exactly.
I like.
Also, we can use our E to cancel CC. Our E also has a cast time, and what we can do, especially against hard CC like Lulu, I see she polymorphs us, so I just press E, and we can use it to go back, and we cancel ourselves from the CC effect as well. So this is extremely good if we have the reaction time to trade non-committally, and we should be safe every single time when we're in E against hard CC like this.
And this is fundamentally why Yone is so good into champs like Lilia and Zoe as well.
Yep.
You can use your E to mitigate the sleep.
Yep, exactly. As well, what we can see is we can use our E creatively to dodge ganks like this. One thing that I really like to do is I like to E forward, what we see right here, and therefore dodge a skill shot, and then we can instantly E backwards to safety of the tower and be completely fine.
Yeah, something that I want to talk about here, and what I've noticed, I've got a bad habit. So if you replay that situation, right, pause it exactly when the ult comes in, pause it there. So a lot of people's default response is that they'll actually eat backwards.
Yep.
Now, there's actually a very big difference between eating forwards and eating backwards, because now you actually have the opportunity in many situations to stack your Q3. So here, let's say you already had Q1, you could Q2 the Karma, then pop back to E, then insta Q3 out. But if you Q2 backwards, a lot of the time you don't have access to a target to stack your Q. So queuing forwards and queuing backwards is very relevant. Obviously, it depends on the HP you have, but there's something to consider.
Yep. And we always got to go back to the E. There's no escaping that. So we got to place our E in the right direction. Otherwise, we're screwed. We can use our E to face check pushes. Since we always go back, we can just chime back and we're completely safe. And we know exactly where the enemies are.
You could also do it to clear wards as well. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll use the E to place wards and clear wards.
Yep.
In a similar vein.
We can also use our E, because it's very non-committal again, to secure CS or plates like this. So because we have our E all the way in the back, we can just get this plate, get the gold, and chime back, and we're completely safe. And we can then either help our team or reset whatever we want. We can also just E forward in lane, and that's something that a lot of people tend to forget. I see a lot of Yones just E forward whenever they have Q3 up, but we can also just always E forward in lane and get a good trade going. And that's what a lot of enemies don't expect like this.
And this is something we see a lot of the MLA with people who start with Yone. They're too conservative with their E into Q3, right? Yep. They just think, I can only E when I have Q3, and then they forget that you can look for nice little short trades regardless. And a lot of times it's going to catch the enemy off guard as well, because they don't know how to react. They're thinking, oh, he's only going to E when he has Q3, but no, that's not the case whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Most enemies only respect you when you have your Q3 up. So the times where you don't have your Q3 up, especially, are the times where you can catch them off guard and get real big advantages.
And so I would say there's like kind of 4 major trading patterns. There's like the one that you said before, which was you can actually Q3 into E. So that's when obviously you're very healthy and you have the long lane. You can E into Q3. You can E into what you did here, which was basically just E into Q1 or Q2. And then you can also actually just straight up R them, which I'm sure we'll kind of talk about later on in the video. But
yeah, exactly. And this one Curtis already talked about. We can get some beautiful vision in our E, very non-committal, extremely fast, and very deep vision. So this is always nice for some safety. So afterwards, we can be more aggressive in the lane.
Yes, and this is what I was talking about before, the R in lane. This is very, very important. This is something that like completely changes the dynamic of the champion, in my opinion. Because people don't expect it. People do not expect the immediate R. Their mental stack is thinking, oh, he doesn't have E, he's not going to go in. He doesn't have Q3, he's not going to go in. If you just R, a lot of the time they're not going to actually have the reaction times to do this because they're not thinking about it. They're not anticipating it. So this is something that I would strongly recommend, especially if you're like a beginner intermediate, play around with this R in lane to catch people off guard. And the great thing about this is I would recommend having 1 Q stack. Like maybe you stack your Q once on a minion. So you have Q1, you go straight into Q2, and then you're already basically chasing them down the long lane. So yeah, this is a fundamental of Yone, in my opinion.
It is. And the nice thing about this is they always feel safe and secure because of these big minion waves, but they actually instantly die if we hit them with our R2.
It's like Aurelia, because how the Aurelia
Yeah.
R also damages the minions, the same thing as Yone R.
Yep, exactly. And it will catch a lot of people off guard. You get a lot of kills with this nice little ability usage.
Yeah, this is I would say this is probably the most reliable way to get solo kills.
Yep, I agree. We can also use our flash to re-angle our ult placement. And this is extremely useful in skirmishes, especially when we need to hit both of the enemies to guarantee a win in the skirmish. And that will really put your skirmish in the favor.
Yeah, and I think you reposition as well in this dragon fight, right? I think you flash
Yep.
after over the wall, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is quite a powerful, and you can actually do that. What you could do, what you said before with the flash Q3, like Q3 flash into R as well. That's another really good reposition technique.
Here's the one that we just talked about.
Yep, boom, Q3 flash R, amazing.
Exactly. All right, one more thing that we can do is we can R while we're getting CC'd like this. So certain CCs have windups, but there's also some champs, for example, like Renekton W. Their CC has a cast time, and what we can do is we can channel our R during the CC, and we're actually not really CC'd, but we're then using our R animation, which actually allows us to deal more damage over time. Or in this case, get onto the enemies. All right, the next time that we can do, and this is extremely high skill cap, and this is why I want to go back a little bit and explain it beforehand. Our R is a channel animation, and especially when we're in our E, there's a lot of ways how people can avoid our E damage. So what you can do is you can actually stack someone up and have enough damage to kill someone with your E, but they Zonias it. But we can actually extend our E duration with our R or with our Q3. And even though they're Zonias, then they're still
oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't even think of it like that. Yeah, because you're actually still in the E, so the E won't pop. And so the longer you extend it, you can actually, that's really, really good. So it's similar to the concept before, like extending your E with the Q3 as well. So it's a similar thing.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I like that. And people might be thinking like, you know, are all these little details relevant? They are. They are actually extremely relevant because every little bit of damage matters with Yone because you don't provide utility. You need to know how to maximize your damage output.
Yep, exactly. Another great thing, and especially what's very important for our usage fundamentals, is that we make sure that we hit it. So how can we guarantee hit it? So either we follow up on CC from our team, or another great thing is we use it out of vision, like here. And if we use it out of vision, it's very hard for the enemies to dodge. You can get a very nice flank, a very nice engage, in comparison to when you're just throwing it when people can see you, because then it's very, very easy to sidestep.
Very linear. And this is something that we're going to go deep on in the mid-game session. We'll talk about fog of war usage, shoving and moving and all that sort of stuff.
Yep. All right. Another great thing that we can do is we can CC to stall for our jungler to secure an objective. So what I do right here is I do the classic Yone combo with the E and Q3. I place my E in the Baron pit so that I can always snap back. Then I CC the enemies. I see that Diana's trying to flash steal, so I hit her with my R. We grab the Baron in the meantime to give her not a single chance to steal the Baron.
Yep, stack Q3, E over, boom, beautiful.
So now that we've got all the ways to use our abilities out of the way, we got to make sure that we understand how to improve at them and recognize when we should do which ones in which situations. So in the early game, what is especially important is our Q3 and our E usage in lane. Are we using our E to trade? Are we using our Q3 correctly, combining it? Or do we need to dodge certain abilities with our E?
Yeah. Reactive or proactive E usage. And this is one of the big things. Most of your reviews, especially as an intermediate Yone player, is you're going to be starting to get much more specific about your ability usage. You can't just have, you know, like this general approach. It's like, oh, yeah, might be Yone and I do E into Q3 every single time. You've got to start getting a little bit more specific. Sometimes you're going to have to do E into Q1. Sometimes you're going to have to time your W with particular poke to minimize damage, right? So what we're going to talk about here and what Tim's going to walk through is what he would be looking for if he were in the process of refining his ability usage. And then going through that process both for early game and the mid to late game.
Yep, exactly. So as I said, for the early game, it's especially important to look at their E usage for trading, our W usage, are we using it correctly? Are we either using it to poke? Are we either using it for anti-burst or last hitting? These are all possibilities to use our W. We got to use it correctly to make sure that we keep the pressure up in the lane. Also, preparing Q stacks. For us to have pressure in the lane, we got to prepare our Q stacks properly, and we got to have them at the right stacks at the right time. Do we have one Q for the R, for example?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say here was, you know, once you kind of understand, once you start to get a little bit more sophisticated in your ability usage understanding, what you'll see is you'll be able to go to the lane phase and be like, okay, I'm in a sticky situation here. How could I have used my kit creatively or my abilities creatively to get out of this situation or not be in this situation in the first place? So over time, the more mastery you get with Yone, you'll be able to see more and more and more possibilities. And like what Tim's trying to get in, why we said all these clips of different ways to use your kit, you're like, oh, I could have actually used my E to get that ward, which would have allowed me to lean. And then, or I could have actually stacked my Q3 off the Raptors, which would have actually allowed me to CS non-committally. You'll start to see all these creative solutions to problems. That's why Yone is such an amazing champion, because there's so many ways to juice the value out of your kit.
Yeah,
very important.
Exactly. And then finally, for the early game, it's very important that we understand how to do maximum DPS on Yone. So we can go into practice tool, we can place a dummy down, and we can try to get the max damage combo in our E. So what I recommend to do is that we E forward, or that we combine something with our E, and we have that 4-second window to get as much damage onto the dummy as possible and get your highest scores, get your best numbers, because those are the combos that we want to use in game as well. So for mid to late game is completely different than the early game. In the mid to late game, it's all about R usage. Do we have R for team fights? Are we using R correctly, or are we just missing it? Yeah. E usage, do we E too soon so we're out of the fight, or do we not use E correctly to dodge abilities?
Or should we not even use E? Sometimes you should start the fight with R, especially if you're going to tank build, get in the middle of the fight, then chase with E. The ordering of the abilities is very important. And this is something we're going to talk about in the mid game, where depending on the build that you've gone, that's going to change your interpretation of your role in fights, essentially. If you're going a squishier build, you're going more for burst, you want to be maybe going ER, pop, in, out, go, non-committal. If you're going tank, you might want to stay in the fight. So R and E usage, again, like Tim said, is absolutely fundamental. That's what you should be directing all of your attention on in the mid-game reviews for ability usage.
Exactly. And also preparing Q stacks, because that gives us mobility, it gives us damage, it gives us threat. So we want to find all these jungle camps, all the waves, and prepare everything in a way that we can use it to have that threat and have those options and possibilities to get onto the enemies.
A great little thing that I do is that whenever I'm heading into a team fight, I'm searching for anything to stack my Q3 off. So when I'm in a review and I'm going to a team fight, I'm like, well, why do I not have my Q3 stacked up? Was there any way that I could possibly have had my Q3 stacked up before going into this fight? Sometimes it's just not going to be feasible. Other times, yes. So again, whether it's stacking it on the blue, walking to a fight, or Krugs, or a Gromp, or a Wolves, or even like an additional like stray creep, or whatever the hell it might be, or even you're walking down to a river skirmish, you're stacking it off a dragon or something like that. Little things like that actually are very important. So again, Tim's hit the nail on the head. Preparing Q stacks can completely change your champion.
Yep, exactly. So we're going to jump into 3 examples right now, and I will explain how I would review my own ability usage in these fights, the good or the bad, and how we can improve them. So this is how I would review my ability usage here in the early game. And early game, I'm trying to keep my Q stacks up right here. I've got my E up, so I want to trade with the Victor. Boom. I had already a Q1, so now I have Q2 into the Q3. Beautiful trade. And I Q1, I R, I have Q3 up right now, and I basically get a free kill onto the Victor. So let's rewind this real quick and see why this ability usage is so good. So I have my Q1 stacking right now, and I need one more Q to get an actual dash. The dash poses threat upon Victor. So what I do right now is I E forward because I want to trade. And I get my Q2 right now up, which means that I have the Q3 ready to go. I also shield his burst, and then because I get stunned, but I have my dash up, I can close the gap, get a longer trade. And before I ult in, I make sure that I Q the minions first, because in my ult cast, my Q cooldown already gets refunded. That means I'm faster at my dash again. I only have to Q him once here, and there's no way for him to escape.
So and notice how all those little details added up. If you didn't stack your Q3, you might not have got the kill. And even like the little things like the ordering of the W as well, making sure that you're casting W before you're going into the play. Really, really good. Love it.
Exactly. So now we're going to jump into two mid to late game reviews where the ability usage can be improved. So this one's from an MLA member. I'm very, very sorry for adding this clip, but it was just so good. So what we see right here, he E's instantly into ult, he hits the Swain, and he gets the kill. And you would say, okay, well, pretty good team fight, right? We won the team fight. But now actually let's put it into a different perspective. What if you guys weren't ahead at this point and the enemy team was just as strong as we were? Were we actually quite useful in this team fight? In my opinion, not really. I think we E too soon because we're not really under threat. So, and this means that we have to return back to our E in 4 seconds. And I think we also use our R incorrectly by using it only on one.
And on top of this, he could have stacked his Q, in my opinion, off the Gromp on the way through. He could have. I think he could have, because there was no rush there. His team's not committed yet. He actually had enough time to get one Q stack onto the Gromp at minimum. So between, so notice how there was that gap, like you said, between the E into the R. So like he actually walked for like a second after he casted E. So it wasn't an instant ER. So he's not maximizing his uptime in terms of getting damage output. So all those little things add up. So yeah, I agree. So the lack of stacking Q3 or Q on the Gromp, the rushed ER way too early, right? He didn't need to go in yet.
Yep, exactly.
He could have walked up way further. And then look, the fight itself when he's in it is okay, but notice how he didn't have enough time to get his Q3 off. He could have, if he actually either stacked his Q earlier or cast his E a little bit later and made sure there was no gap between the E and R, he could have actually got a Q3 off.
Exactly. And that's something that I really want to push here is be patient with your E's and be patient with your ults. It's crucial to our team fighting and our skirmishing, and we rather hold on to it rather than use it at the beginning of the fight.
And also, what I want to talk about here is the mindset when reviewing this. Just because you win the fight doesn't mean you've played the fight optimally, right? And look, you can get away with this in the short term, especially within your lower elo brackets. But in the long run, if you're sloppy with your ability usage, it will bite you in the ass eventually. Whether it's in gold, or whether it be plat 2, whether a D4 or a master, at some point it will bite you in the ass.
Right. Now we're moving on into a nice little clip of me myself where I absolutely run a team fight by, as we can see, I get greedy for the fish. I E forwards without having R.
Oh no.
I have no E for what's coming next. Then I see the enemies closing in upon us. I see the E flanking right here, and I forgot she has a dash, so I basically R to Narnia, and I lose the fight for a team. Lucian has no peel. I deal not enough damage, and it's a very awkward situation.
Yeah, so the main problems here was I mean, I don't even think going on to the Nami probably wasn't even the best play anyway, right? No. It definitely wasn't the best play. I mean, if you had R and you could get the pick, maybe.
Yep.
Maybe. But then an argument could be made, is using R for a support pick even worth it?
Exactly.
Hard to say. And then obviously here, I mean, you didn't factor in the mobility of the Evelyn. Yep. And then I would always say here as well, you could have popped back to E a little bit sooner to maybe mitigate that. Or you could have even used the movement speed more from the E, right? To actually avoid the skill shots. Because here you actually had the movement speed because you're walking towards the targets to avoid that Nami bubble. You actually could have so here when the Nami bubble comes, actually focus on avoiding it and then utilizing the movement speed rather than standing still and auto attacking. So little things like that go a long way.
And also my Q3 went only on Lulu. I'm pretty sure I could have hit Nami and Jace as well.
That as well,
with it. So a lot of things, but especially focused on the E and the R usage, because that's especially what's important in these skirmishes and these late game team fights.
And last thing I will say about this is, think about this is just not the way this specific build of Yone wants to play. You're in the middle of the open. Yep. There's no fog of war. It's incredibly linear. Sure, you could have used the R better, but it's already hard to use your R in general. You imagine you've gone full assassin build, right? You've gone shield bow IE, full burst. Mm-hmm. So think of yourself as an assassin. You're in the middle of the open. Hey, everyone, I'm Yone. I have my R. Everyone's going to dodge it. So there's no fog of war usage or anything. So this is, I would say, the main problem is why the hell am I in this situation in the first place? Why am I not stacking my Q3 or something or using fog of war? All right, so now we're going to be talking about some common mistakes. Now, this is going to be a bit of a blooper reel from my learning journey with Yone. So there's a lot of ugly stuff here. And these are things that I learned along my journey, and things that I think was streamlined again through the help of Tim and Ajax. But I think these will really help you in your journey. So the first one is using R without multi-threat and just overall poor threat assessment. So you see here, I'm kind of walking here from try. I've got a very similar build to Tim before with the full burst oriented setup, shield boat IE. I'm coming in very linearly. They know where I am. I get CC'd, expose myself completely to the Akali, and just get one shot. So again, think of yourself as an assassin. My team isn't going in here. My Evelyn's not in position yet. There's actually very minimal multi-threat. Aurelia is actually on the disengage. She actually doesn't even have R at this stage. I'm just going to leave myself completely exposed if I go in here. Who the hell is going to back me up? And not to mention, they're not fully committed, so I'm not actually CCing anyone. So if I am going to do this, I got to ensure that I'm landing my R, because I know that if I don't land my R, I'm going to get CC'd and I'm going to die. And I need to use the CC of my R itself as peel. So I made a lot of these mistakes when I was early on in my journey where I would just feel very rushed. This is also talking about what kind of following from what Tim said before about rushing your combos, rushing your abilities. Relax. Wait for them to come into you a little bit more. Wait for them to be much more committed. Then, and only then, can you... Imagine if I just waited maybe another 2 seconds here. Instead of ERing around the corner, waited maybe an extra 2 seconds, wait for them to commit here. I'm sitting here. Yep. And then I would get a beautiful angle from there.
Yep.
They would probably even all line up in a line here as well. It would be much cleaner. And then I could get in, get out. That would buy a little bit more time for Evelyn on the backside. Much better. Also, not to mention, when you're playing Yone, it's very important you identify key CC abilities and key burst abilities, especially when you're going this burst-oriented setup. So, champions like, we've got Shen here, Viego with the stuns, obviously the hard counters like Rammus or Leona. A lot of these champions that can CC you, burst you. They're the ones you got to look out for. So this is a mistake that's good to make from a limit testing perspective, but again, tying back to reviewing your ability usage. The problem there is the rushed ER, and also the ordering of the abilities and just overall lack of patience. Then you're going to make classical mechanical misplays. This is like an El Clasico. I'm trying to fight the Shyvana here, and I don't know how to use my abilities. I did not even need to use my E here, I don't even think. I could have just Q3'd. But here, I do exactly what Tim said before, that I don't chain CC my Q3 into R, and I don't even think I could have chain CC'd my Q3 into R anyway, because I'm such close range. And as a result, I go under the tower, and then I flash on the spot and die. This is the sort of mistake, maybe it's just me, but this is I remember I was making a lot of these mistakes, and so I remember I couldn't conceptualize how should I use my E. How do I, and I didn't, and notice here how I went Q3 auto, then R, right? If I had actually just gone for a normal Q3 R, Shyvana would have been dead. It would have been a clean kill, but I didn't chain CC properly, and then I'm just like tilted or some shit, and then I just die. So this is again classic mechanical mistake. This is very, very normal early on your journey, but you need to go back and look at it specifically. What could I have done better with my abilities? I think the kiting was okay here. I don't even know if I needed E, but you could get away with the E. But the Q3, where did I mess up? The auto into the R, don't chain CC, I even waste my Q, by the way. Look at this. I even waste my Q at the end, under the tower. So look at this. I waste my Q there. So I think when I pop back, I didn't even have my Q instantly as soon as I pop back. Yeah. So there's little things like that make a hell of a lot of difference. Not knowing limits again. So here you'll see I don't have E. I send it with my R. And then I don't know my range well enough, so now I have to fully commit, and now I'm in the thick of it. Look at my items, guys. 1,300 gold. I don't even have a single mythic. I'm pretty piss weak at this stage. Sure, I'm CSing well. This is actually, this is a lot I want to talk about here. I am absolutely sending it. I'm going in balls to the wall. I didn't go with my non-committal E here. I'm sending it. I'm in the middle of a team fight. This is just fundamentally not Yone's identity. I'm trying to do too much here. This is something like a Fizz or a LeBlanc or a Galio or something would do. This is not Yone's identity. I'm going in committally. I'm going in without my E cooldown, and more importantly, I'm not playing on my spikes. One of the most common problems I've noticed both with myself and a lot of MLA clients is that most people can get away with getting an okay lead in the early lane. Look at my CS here. CSing 10 CS per minute, Berserker Grease, Noon Quiver. What do a lot of people, Tim, here, what do? They think they're strong. They think, I'm a beast. I'm 10 CS per minute. Because on many other champs, if you're playing Silas or if you're playing a lot of other mages, if you're 10 CS per minute, by 11 minutes and at 1-0, you can probably stomp the game. Yone is not like that. In the early game, you need to use this time to bridge the gap to get to your spikes. So here I haven't got to my key spikes yet, so I got to be very conservative. I'm also sitting on 1,300 gold here. So my mindset needs to be, again, use this little bit of time to get to my items, buy time, play conservatively with my teammate location. And so after I couldn't accept reality, I missed my R, and I shouldn't have taken this bottle. Disengage, play's done, no burst, get out. But I couldn't accept reality. I'm trying to do too much. This is a classic mistake in the Yone journey, trying to do too much. So from a limit testing perspective, sure, but again, just fundamentally terrible. And then this is, I would say, quite common here. I actually thought we could like win the 2v2 with me and the Echo, and I just didn't even know how to approach it. So I'm like, okay, maybe I could kite out here, use my E to create space, and then like pop back. I shouldn't even have used my E here, but here I end up opting in for the fight with my Echo. But I know that we actually can't win. Echo's really, really weak here. He's level 3, Grace is level 4 with red buff. These are the sorts of plays that I would recommend you do make. If you're ever unsure, do it. If you're ever unsure about if you can kill or if you win, just do it. But you are going to lose a lot of games doing this, unfortunately. Yep. But looking at it from a micro perspective, I shouldn't have even used my E. I should have held my E. I should have actually baited in a little bit more and then used my E to chase on the back end rather than, I get no value out of my E there. I don't displace any damage. I don't get any damage from the E itself. So poor ability usage, but fundamentally just even a poor fight to take. So these are the sorts of decisions or mistakes you are going to make, and that's perfectly normal. These are all fine mistakes. This mistake is the thing that I would say is the most common mistake and the worst quality mistake. Not valuing your own life. So look at the situation again. I am 0-0-0. Thumbs up, great for Yone. CSing, not amazing, but not terrible. I have ult, I have everything. At this stage of the game, you must value your life. One single death, the game goes down a massive hill. Like you're basically screwed. I cannot stress this enough. One single death will completely change the outcome of the game because your champion fundamentally does not provide utility. So if you get behind, you're a melee that doesn't build defensives, has to build berserkers, is completely tied to itemization, provides barely any utility. So here, I know that Evelyn is somewhat in the area, but what do? I send it anyway, thinking, oh, she might not be there. It was like a risky, she might not be there. These are the mistakes that will cost you games. Here's another example. I think I kill their mid laner. I have no ult, no sums. I know they have a Rengar who's level 6. Like, oh, you know what? I'm going to greed for this wave. I'm going to greed. Rengar comes with ult, and I die. These are what I call poor quality mistakes because they come from a place of risk, taking way too much risk, and fundamentally not valuing my own life. This is the foundation of being a good Yone player. Staying alive, knowing how to get to your first item, your key pivotal spikes without dying. I cannot stress this enough. So all these other mistakes, guys, not knowing if you win a 2v2, not knowing your limits, mechanical misplays, not really understanding multi-threat and team fights with your R, these are all perfectly normal. These mistakes, where it's risky, they could be there, bad quality mistakes. Does that all make sense, Tim? Was there anything you think I could expand on here?
I think this is great. Yeah, so the only thing I want to add to this is the reason why these mistakes are so bad is because I can't stress it enough. And I know for everyone that has played some Yone is horrible when behind, but he's very, very good when ahead. So we got to tip the skills in our favor, and we got to make sure that we don't fall behind by making stupid plays.
So now we're getting into the mindset stuff here. So Tim actually came up with a beautiful analogy, especially when Yone's mastered, that you're like kind of a lion, in the savannah, hunting your prey. So where did this come from, Tim? And walk us through what exactly is this Yone mindset?
So yeah, I compared Yone to an animal, and I was like, lion's got to be the perfect fit for it. Because the things that we do as Yone are very similar to what a lion does in the wild. So we're extremely agile, flexible. We got the mobility in our kit. We've got tons of stuff that we can do. But of course, we require patience and confidence to make it work. And if we compare it to a lion, for example, they're lying in the grass, they're waiting for the deer to run by it and pounce at them at the right time. But we're also down for a good fair fight. We can fight a buffalo in the desert. We can beat him if we really need to. So that's also part of the lion mindset. But the most important parts of the lion mindset is knowing when we're strong. When we're a cub, we're not gonna fight, and we specifically prey on the weak. It's free food, and that's exactly what we want as a lion.
Yep, that's spot on.
So we got a few examples for the lion mindset. 3 good ones, 1 bad one. We're gonna jump straight into it. So this first one is from Zeus. And as we saw this Worlds, Zeus Yone was absolutely popping. A crazy performance that he did. And he actually shows us some great clips and how he actually applies this mindset in his game. So let's see how he does this. So they get the Baron and Zeus moves to top to catch the wave. And he's extremely hesitant with where he walks. He knows that there might be someone in the area, but he also knows that he can definitely go in if he has his E up. So he goes in when he has E up, gets his beautiful kill. And right now, what he does is instead of going face first into the Silas, he actually waits. He just chills. He's very patient. And now he knows when he's got his abilities back up, he's got his E up, so he's safe. That's the time where he goes for the Silas and they grab a beautiful kill. And that was all possible by how patient that he was, how much he valued his own life, and how much he understood how much damage that he did and preyed on the weak. This one is from Zeus as well. And what we can see here is a very similar thing as what we just saw in top lane. But that's especially his patience in this team fight and his understanding of when he can go in and when he cannot go in. So he gets a nice pick onto enemy Silas. And then he knows he's under threat on bot lane. So he uses his E to basically get a free escape. And he really values his own life by staying bot lane.
I like how he clears the wave there as well, kind of non-committally. See that? How he uses E to clear the wave non-committally so he can't get dove or something. That was really nice.
Yep, exactly. And what he does after that is he TPs back. And he knows that he's still under a lot of threat. But he knows he can get a fair fight like this. He stalls a lot of time from the enemies with his agility and with his mobility. And then he stacks his Q onto the bot waves, sees that his team is ready for a fight, and gets a great R, flashes out to survive, and basically helps his team onto a beautiful victory.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult position to be in as well, because he's got very little vision around here. He knows there's someone there, and he's just using his E beautifully to hover around the edges. Using E to create space, charge up your R, flash in and out. It's kind of going in and out, playing that job of just creating space beautifully. Very, very nice.
Exactly. And this is extremely high skill cap. Yep. So the last one is me playing, and I'm a lion. I'm hungry. And what we see right here is I'm in the side lane. I'm very strong. And I know that a prey is coming real soon. So what I do is I chill in the jungle. I got my Gromp ready to stack my Q up on. And I'm extremely patient right here. And I'm so patient that I even let this Q3 run out. I signal my Amumu back. I get my Q3. I see the enemy coming. And we basically get a free kill right here.
Yeah, look at that. If you'd actually rushed down the Gromp, it would have been, you probably actually wouldn't have killed the Yasuo in that situation. You would have just chased, kind of went down the lane there. So because you didn't kill the Gromp, this is what we're talking about before, the importance of stacking your ability, stacking your Q3 off camps or whether it's minions or whatever the hell it might be. Yep. Very nice.
Exactly. And now here as well, we've seen this example before, very bad lion mindset. First of all, I'm completely in the wrong place of the map. I'm not playing towards my identity of my items. And I'm impatient with my E. I see a fish, I get hungry. But I use my E incorrectly. And then I'll also get impatient with my R, and it's just an absolute disaster.
You know what I visualize here, like with the lion, is just like he's just running around. Oh, I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go here. It's just like so uncalculated. Like like when you think of it with that lion mentality, it's actually really makes it clear how different this is comparatively to those other clips. The last one, how patient, how poised you are, lurking in the shadows, stacking your Q3 and Fog of War. The Zeus kind of hovering around the edges. This is, a really good juxtaposition between the two different styles. I love it. Now we're getting into the juice. the thick of it. We're getting to the meat of the guide right now, the mid game. And
Yes.
I've decided to kind of doing it in a different approach. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the 3 pillars of mid game. And this is exactly what I look for in my mid games when I'm reviewing my own mid games, right? We've got number 1, your ability to identify your role inside the composition, whether it's, complementing other divers, whether it's peeling an AD carry, whether it's creating space for other fed carries, whatever the hell it might be. Building according to that role in the composition. So these kind of go hand in hand. And number 3, how am I playing the map and fighting overall in accordance to my role? And this also ties into your mindset. So all these 3 things tie in together. They all revolve around build, mindset, role identification. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through 4 mid-game replays. Tim's going to go through playing mid-game through the lens of an assassin, like probably with the shield bow IE build. And then he's going to show it done poorly, right? So done well, done poorly. Then I'm going to show you a game, play mid-game through the tank lens, and then playing poorly through the tank lens. So we're going to go through basically all 4 possibilities. This is basically the only 4 possibilities you'll have in your replays. Good assassin, bad assassin, good tank, bad tank. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into those clips.
All right, so in this review, what we see is the game is slightly in our favor. I'm going for the shield bow build, and the mid game is starting to happen, and I'm going into the side lane. So right now, my goals is to pressure the side lane, be very efficient, and get to my next item spike, because that's the time where I really start rock and rolling. So I'm hyper efficient. I make sure that I push all my waves, and after that, I hover my camera towards where my team is. I get some good quality vision with my E to make sure that I'm safe. I'm valuing my life a lot here, and I get this jungle camp because it means that I get even faster towards my spike. Then what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to see if Fizz moves up, if I can get a kill onto him. But I know that Fizz is also pretty strong, and I got to play it extremely well to make sure that I win it. If he spots
I like
me,
how conservative you are here. Just take it nice and slow.
Yep.
No forcing.
Exactly. I see some stuff happening on mid, and I'm not afraid to respond because I got my R and my E up. And that's the stuff that we have to keep in mind when we go.
I love this utilizing fog of war. If you got that entire sequence is so beautiful. You shove out the side, you get some good vision, you pan your camera mid, you identify there's some action there, you hover in the fog of war, and unfortunately you don't clip your R. It was very, very close, but the mindset's perfect there. Mindset's really, really good. We're not forcing anything. We're taking it slow. We're utilizing fog of war. We're not brute forcing things in the middle of the lane. We're just taking it nice and easy.
Yep, exactly. So we win the skirmish. We get a few kills. We make sure to push the waves. We're extremely efficient again, and we get the dragon, which leads to a great reset. And on this great reset, I get shield bow plus cloak. That means that right now I'm extremely, extremely strong.
Swap the lane assignments. We go top side.
Yep. We scout for some vision again, and we get ourselves a free herald because we're quite far ahead. So right now, because I am going for the assassin build, what I like to do is, instead of grouping mid with herald with my team, I'm actually going to pressure the side lane because I know I'm very, very strong.
And I like the pings there, pinging your team back, pinging that you're on your way top side, communicating with your team that you want to go play side.
Yep, exactly. And even though I see some stuff going on around mid lane, I'm completely happy just staying here, and I'm happy trading the resources.
Yep, and you've got Rift here as well, so you actually have genuine threat on the tier 2, yeah.
Yep.
I like this. You're just all-inning on your identity.
Yep. And I keep hovering mid to see what's actually happening, because maybe they're basing, maybe they're coming to contest me, and that allows me to really understand which decision I can make.
Yep.
So we get the Rift, we get 2 towers.
Beautiful.
And I know I'm strong right now, so I'm happy to take this fight here.
Yep, and we know they've used a lot of their cooldowns. Nice. Good chance to see with the Q3 into R. They're still staying mid, right? They're basically all dead, so we can... I don't know if we'll be able to get this. Looks close, though. But notice how all of this was only possible because you committed all into your style. You know you had the Rift. You know you didn't really want to siege mid or anything like that.
Yep, exactly.
Very, very close on that Q there. Kite out the melee with the extended range of the Q.
Yep, and I slightly
Dining.
unvalue my life here, which means that I die in the
Yeah,
end.
you go a little bit too deep here. I personally would have just based, I think, basing instead of the inhib. Like, I think after you got the kill on the fizz, just a base angle, but
Yep,
the mindset
you're
is
a bit
good.
too hyped.
Yeah.
Right, so moving on to the next one, and this is actually a very poor example of playing through the assassin lens. So if we take a look at the game state right here, what we see is we see a few squishy champs onto the enemy team, and this is actually a game where team fighting is pretty hard. They got a Seraphine, they got a Yone, they got an Aatrox. What am I going to do as a Yone in team fights right here, except for if I get a very, very good R? So I think I should have all-in on the split push style this game, but I actually went for Borg into tank. And this led me to being unable to do anything against Aatrox in the side lane, but also led me to waste the lead that I had.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's hard to say because, like, you've also got a decent team fight comp though. You've got an Ornn, so it's a tough one, isn't it? It's a really tough game state.
Yep. So I collect my farm in the side lane. I push up. My team is slowly losing the fight. That's unfortunate, but I do think that I'm still very good into the side lane. I'm very efficient. I get all the creeps, and I get a pretty decent base off right here. So what's the time where it actually goes wrong? That's right here. So I get a beautiful tower, and I see some fighting going on, but I actually forget that there's still a Rengar in the game, and I die right here. And this death is massive. It's absolutely massive. Because right now, I lose resources, I lose pressure, and that's not so good.
So it seems like that you didn't really get specific enough about how many people were in that fight there. You automatically assumed that Rengar was going to be grouping when they weren't, and then as a result, you get punished.
Yep, exactly.
It ties into those lull state. I would say the lull states there, identifying the key threats and realizing that Rengar has a metric ton of threat onto this game.
Yep, indeed. So I keep going top. I'm getting slightly emotional right now because the game is looking to be quite rough. I kill the Seraphine in the side lane by very, very good ability usage. And again, I get the tower, very good reset. But right here, what we see again is I push up. I forget that Rengar has R up still, and I die again.
Yeah, so you've made some good plays, but then you've made these plays in between that are just throwing the game, and you can't afford to die like this, especially in a game like this where it's on your back. You just can't afford to die.
Yep, exactly. So it's very important that you value your life and that you think of enemy threat when you're playing this side lane Yone, and that you're hyper aware that you stay alive.
All right, so now we're going to be talking about the tank build. So this was actually a game where I played Yone top. But I think it's a great example of how you want to play team fights and how you want to play the map when you're playing the tank build. So this situation, I'm just farming up a storm. I've got to my Bork. I'm playing the side now, making this Ornn react. And this is all pretty straightforward. Now, the key differentiator when you're playing tank build, when you're versus split push, is a tank is all about shoving and moving and actually grouping. Because your identity is that about creating space. So let's contrast this with Tim before. Tim, when you're playing the assassin build, you're lurking in the shadows. You're primarily playing the side lane. You're all about shoving and then getting that burst. My mindset in this game is I'm more about I want to be at the major team fights. I don't really want to split push as much. Sure, I'm going to continue to pressure the side. You've got to play side with both of them. But I'm primarily focusing more on grouping. So you'll see how I'm shoving, hovering, panning my camera, seeing what's up, continuing pressuring the side onto this Ornn here. This is all relatively straightforward. If I see a play happen, I'm going to move. So I see a play, I'm going. Looks like a bit of a chaotic skirmish in this situation. Stacking my Q3. And then notice how here I don't actually go in here because the play was over. Look at this. Very good discipline. The play was over. My team was dead. No point compensating. I'm not going to clean up. I've got Bork. How the hell am I going to kill this Aatrox and an Ornn? And I'm just not going to kill them there. So no compensating. Disengage. Then my Silas comes. So now my team is here. Again, stack my Q. Boom. Notice how here I don't E. right? Notice how I don't E. I want to stay in combat. These are tankier members. Again,
I
I
love
want
this
to.
ability usage here.
It's
It's
R.
very good.
Just R in, and then that way I'm able to stay in combat. So very important. So notice a few little details here. Stacking my Q off the wave, staying in combat, Ring in rather than E, because I don't need to. Why would I need to E? I need to stay in combat. So straight away, continue to shove the next wave, reset. Again, talking about itemization, when you're going tank build, you really want to get Zeal, right? Zeal's very important when you're going tank build. Straight away. Now notice that I don't need to attend the top wave yet. It's very far out. So I'm like, okay, while I've got time, I can maybe hover around mid, see what's up. So I go for a loop on top side. Now I'm able to get here, get on top of the Zeri, and we're able to get a nice little pick there. And that's purely, a lot of people would just default straight to the side lane. No, I keep my camera band. I see what's up. I don't immediately need to attend the side lane. So I'm able to get a nice little kill there. I see Silas die bot side. I start to go top, shove out top as well, shove out all this all the way deep. Now, same thing, shove and move Dragon. Dragon's the next objective. I don't want to be there late to an objective. Even though I have TP, I'd rather just be there to create space. I come in from the bot side here, or top side, and I just want to be there and group with my team and stack objectives. I've got tank build here. I really want to be there to help my team. Again, why would I need to use E here, guys? I want to be in the fight. Why? No need to use my E. So I'm going in. I've got my Aegis as well, so I'm quite tanky. Straight away, boom. And now I can use my E to chase. End up missing my Q3, but not too bad. Stack my Q3 again. Boom. Next target. So stock standard grouping Yone, creating space for my team. They don't need me for the dragon. Keep my farm up on the way through. Go back to top side. I think I tried to pick this guy on the way through. I think we kill him. Oh yeah, get hooked, unfortunately. This is all relatively straightforward. A little bit of chaos. Now I've got my duck show. Look at my build right now. Full tank, I've got the full tank build, rock and rolling. This is where tank build is strongest, in my opinion. You've got your Zeal, you've completed your tank mythic, and you've got your Bork. This is absolute go time. So notice what I do. I see that they're actually moving towards the Baron there, so I just go in to create space. And because I have got the tank build, I can actually do this. So I put my blue trinket, and now I'm able to go in here. And obviously, I'm going to E into R because in this situation, I need to get them off the Baron, and I don't want to stay in the middle of the pit. So in this situation, I'm able to get them off the Baron just by creating space there. And then disengage, wait for my team. Beautiful. Get the Gromp on the way through. Try to stack my Q3 off this. And now I'm able to help my Kai'Sa. Staying in combat. Look at this, how I'm not panicking. Just staying in combat. I've got my Juck Show. I'm really bloody tanky in this situation. Again, same thing, stacking the Q. This is all straightforward stuff that we covered before. I thought we could actually do the Baron here. And I think we tried to tank it, but yeah, I thought that we're going to turn on back to the Baron after we got the kills, but the fight still ensues. So I had to disengage. This is all relatively straightforward. But same thing here, guys. I go to the side, but notice how I'm not split pushing. I instantly shove move. Shove move, shove move. I'm trying to be there with the team, always hovering around the edges. Here we go. ER. And the only reason I ER'd in this situation is because I think I actually needed the range there as well.
Yeah, you did.
So kind of needed that one. Unfortunately, see if I can actually get this kill. I didn't. Sorry. ER Q. No, what I should have done, I shouldn't have W'd there, I think. I think I should have actually just Q'd and just got on top of him. Like Q and just keep running straight and use my W at the end because I might have been able to get a last Q. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but again, same thing, getting back in combat, staying in combat. Notice my AD carry is dead, so I have to play it slow. I wouldn't be tanking for anyone. If I went in here with my Q3 and my E, who the hell am I tanking damage for? Who am I creating space for? Disengage, wait for my team to come back up. Now my dynasty, I'm just creating a little bit of space, working around the edges, consistently going back to the side. Unfortunately, my team take this fight on bot side, which I didn't think they were going to take because there was no objectives on that bot side. So is what it is. Play side, take the Krugs. Kai'Sa hovers me top side here. He's jammed up against the edge there, so we can get a nice little pick onto the Yone.
I think we slightly rushed the E here.
Yeah, probably didn't need to use E in this situation. Yeah, I probably could have just R'd there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. We get the pick. Straight away, group again. Go to the play. Always go into the play. Just get in there. Send it. Get in there. Create space. No hesitation. And so I group up with my team.
Love how we go next to this wall, and it makes it
Boom.
way harder to dodge this.
Because I'm happy to create space for my team here, getting a little bit of damage down.
Yep.
But don't notice the way I'm playing. I'm not split pushing that much. I'm still keeping up my farm. My farm's still okay. But I'm just really just playing for the team fights here, making sure I'm at every major fight. Always. Boom, boom, boom. Look at this one. See how, guys, I don't use my E? Look at that. I don't even use my E here in this fight. I use it after because I'm happy to go in. I just want to go and send it. I'm really, really tanky in this situation. And then boom, I use E after, and then we're just destroying them at this point. Now the game's kind of over. So I just thought this was a really great example. This is exactly how to play tank build. Very group-centric, hyper focus on my teammates' location, calling off plays when my team isn't there, really being kind of disciplined in the way I use my E and R in fights. So notice, guys, the theme here, tying it back to the slide. I've identified my role in this game is that I was creating space for other characters because I've got a lot of damage on my team, right? I've also identified that my build is catered towards this tanky style. Therefore, the way I play fights, I need to be sending it with my R rather than ERing, being there for major team fights from the start rather than playing as an assassin. Notice how this all ties in together, contrasting with what Tim said before with his assassin style. Okay, so this is an example of a poorly played tank game. So as you can see, I annihilated my opponent here. I'm, destroyed this Kiana, and I'm thinking, great, I should be able to just now play the sides. What happened? I got cocky. So I'm like, oh, I'm so far ahead, I should just be able to play the side. And so what happened this game is that I got into the side, and I started getting into this weird kind of split push mentality. Now, this is a game where I actually didn't know what Cassante did, to be fair. I didn't really know how well Cassante was at skirmishing, especially with the Juck Show. But notice what I do here. I don't even have TP. I'm just defaulting to the side lane. And here, instead of shoving and moving and helping my team, I try to fight this Cassante for some reason. Why the hell am I fighting this Cassante? Although I could have played the micro better, I don't think it's worth going over here because I just didn't know what the Champion's kit did. I remember fighting and dying. But look what I do after this. After I realize I died on the side, what do I keep doing? I go mid, and then I go back to the side. What am I doing? I'm not helping my team. My team's just dying mid lane on repeat. They've got a decent amount of engage and pick, but I'm split pushing. Why the hell am I split pushing with Bork into the Iceborne, whatever? This is not my champion's identity. And I keep going side. I'm like, what am I doing? And at this stage, I'm still looking. I didn't realize that I wasn't meant to be playing the side. And I'm like, why do I feel so irrelevant? And I keep wasting my time, I keep getting picked in the side lane, getting chunked out, and end up just doing nothing for my team. And then later on, it took me about 10 minutes of just inting it in the side lane to realize, holy shit, I'm actually playing tank build. I don't even necessarily win the side that hard with this build. What the hell am I doing? I should probably group. But by now, it's too late. My team has already died too much. I can't create space for my. I've got a 0-9 Aatrox now. My Kaiser's now out of the game. The game's just screwed now. We don't have enough damage to win this game.
Yep.
But it was too late. And then I started to realize I could group more. And you see me start to group more, but it was too late. So guys, remember, when you're playing the tank build, you need to understand your identity. And this just goes for any Yone game. What the hell is your role in the game? Are you more focused on side laning? Are you more focused on creating space? It doesn't matter which one you do. You just go to all in and make sure that you've got complete clarity between your in-game decisions and your build. That is, in my opinion, 80% of playing Yone. 80% of playing Yone is, especially in mid-game, is just this. Is literally this. So hopefully you guys get the point and see how there's a juxtaposition between the two differing styles.
So after the mid game, of course, comes team fighting and the late game. And it's actually very similar to the mid game. But right now, it's even more important that we stick to our role in the game. And it's mainly our usage and also using vision to get ourselves in a good spot for what our role in the game allows us to do. But there's, of course, something that we got to keep in mind. Late game on Yone is extremely, extremely hard. And because we need to be very good with our R usage and we got to understand our role in the game, we got to also stay calm to think about this, make sure that we do not make any mistakes with this. So it's either going to be peeling for a win condition with the tank build, or we're going to look for somewhat isolated fights to actually get these assassination kills onto the enemy opponents. Let's jump into a few examples. So this first example is from Zeus again on Worlds. And I want to see how beautiful he plays this team fight. And what we see in this team fight is especially how patient he is, his R usage, and how this actually wins him the fight, even though it was a very hard fight to play.
Wow. One little thing there. Look at how he held his E. So look at the few details. He stacked his Q beautifully off the rift. He held his E here. He notice how he didn't go in yet. He waited for his team. Waited for his team, and then he follows up beautifully with the multi-threat. He goes into because remember him, if he goes in too early, he will just die. Or it will be wasted. He's not creating space for anyone, but he waits for Faker to get into position, waits for Carrier, and then boom, they're able to go in together. And then he's after the chase on the back end because he's creating space for the team here. This was such beautiful, patient team fighting. And people don't respect how hard it is to play Yone like that in team fights. That looks easy, but there are so many ways you can mess that up. Very, very good.
Exactly. So this is the next clip. And we see that he actually plays this fight towards what his build allows him to do. So we actually see him in the side lane, and he's getting collapsed on by the enemy team, and his team is moving towards him to support him in his endeavors. And we see actually that he finds an amazing angle onto this Lulu right here, assassinates her, gets out, and actually wins the fight by doing so.
Yeah, he actually went the split pushing build this game. He went the shield bow IE with Zeal this game. Which is very surprising. I wouldn't have thought he would go that build with their comp, which is very interesting. I thought he would go Bork 100%.
Yeah,
very interesting.
I would understand that, but he has a rise, and this team is not meant to team fight against the enemy team.
Just played purely for split push. Yeah,
exactly. That's also what we're going to see here. Actually. So what we see right here is that his jungler owner got called on mid lane, but he recognizes that his comp against the enemy team comp, it's very hard to actually get a fair team fight going. So what he does is, together with Faker, he plays on the side lane. Ryze, of course, gives him this assistance, this hover. But this also means that he gets a bit more mobility and he's allowed to push up a bit further. And Dragon is up. Skirmishing gets caught a little bit, and they are in a bit of trouble. They will lose this Dragon. But what he understands is, instead of compensating and trying to still contest this Dragon, he goes to the top lane together with Faker, and he split pushes to get enemy in.
He knows his identity here. He knows his role in the game. He knows exactly how he needs to be thinking. He's trying to avoid the Malphite wombo combo with the Silas and the Lulu and the Aphelios to play the side. And then take these more man advantage fights where he's making picks.
Exactly.
Playing in accordance to his build. It all makes sense, right? His build and the way he's playing the map is all tying together beautifully.
Exactly. What I want to reiterate here is where Yone and Ryze versus Malphite and Silas, that's actually pretty winnable. But once we start adding Belvev and Lulu into the equation, it's very, very hard for Yone to actually get a good team fight going, because there's so much CC, and you really got to be in your A game, and it's just very hard to get a good ult or a good E.
And it's hard to, it's hard. You don't really get to burst anyone in those team fights. Like Silas has Zonya's, Lulu ult, Lulu polymorph, even Malphite's hard to burst. So your best bet is just to split. We've got here a few tips that you must apply in game, a few Yone fundamentals, things to keep an eye on. These are just things that it's good to have as, just things to remember with Yone. So number one, wave is always more important than a good trade. When you play a lot of Yone, what you'll realize is that you get that surge of dopamine. Yes, I can land that E into Q3. I can go in and kill this guy. But remember, you might take that good trade. Great, lovely. But remember, on the back end, if you screw your wave, it might be very difficult for you to get it out. And then you might die to that gank. You might not have the vision to unbreak that freeze. So again, Yone, tying back to the value your life mindset. Wave states are way more important than taking good trades. In the long run, you've got to be very long-term focused when you're playing Yone, because we don't need to make some crazy shit. You don't need to be Faker in the first 8 minutes. We need to just get to our key spikes. Boring, non-sexy gameplay is what will lead to success.
Exactly. And a good wave state will eventually lead to good trades, but a good trade doesn't lead to a good wave state.
Genius. I love it.
Yep.
Like we've covered a lot throughout this guide, stacking Q all the time for mobility and threat. I think we've gone over that enough. That's, again, something just to keep in mind. We're going to reiterate that again and again and again. Being conservative and patient with R, going back to my blooper clips, throwing my R, just being non-patient, and even with Tim on the Nami, Learn from our mistakes like this, guys. We would rather you be patient and conservative with R because, yeah, like Tim says here as well, holding it will also create pressure. The threat of the R itself forces the enemy to think, oh shit, they have R. When's he going to use it, right? The threat of the R does create pressure. So look, when you're in the start of your journey, and we're talking about earlier in the guide, we're talking about oscillating between fast and slow. Sure, send it a little bit every 15 or so games, and then kind of go back the other way, slow it down, hold it, utilize the threat of the R, so you can kind of know what it feels like to be patient and conservative, but also kind of sending it. But more often than not, once you develop that mastery, you are going to kind of rest on this conservative and patient style. All right, guys, so now we're moving on to the expert phase for people who've got quite a considerable 80 plus games with Yone. We're going to start to get into some details. I want to start by talking about Yone mastery misconceptions. There is no doubt that Yone has a very high skill cap. You watch any Zoo kill montage, you're going to see some crazy shit. And, being able to outplay enemies with micro, you can't assume that the micro component is what Yone mastery is. When I first started playing Yone, I was, and even when I first started thinking about champs like Yasuo and Aurelia, I always thought, oh yeah, it's just micro mechanics outplay. Yes, don't get me wrong. That is a massive part of these champions and their skill expression, their outplay potential. Yes. But in my opinion, and in our opinion, what we've seen and what's given us success in solo queue with these champions, what we've seen from the best Yone players, is their ability to not die and stay relevant regardless of the matchup and the situation. Anyone can look good playing Yone when they're 3-0 in a good matchup. What makes a good Yone player, a very good Yone player, is when they're in a hard matchup, they've been ganked and they're 0-1. What do they do in that situation? Do they just int and die on repeat, or do they know how to minimize and get to their key spikes and identify their role in the comp? So this is where being able to adapt your build, being able to adapt your mindset according to a particular game set and win con, that is what makes a great Yone player. Hence why we're talking about the mindset a lot, adapting your build, identifying your role inside of a composition. Any comments here, Tim?
Yeah, so I really want to highlight the second point. If you're just very good on Yone's micro, you will not be a good Yone and you will not make it too far up the ladder. Of course, you need the micro component, but that doesn't mean that you're going to win games on them. Yes, you're going to get leads. Yes, you're going to play lanes pretty well. But winning games on Yones is a much different story than just having good micro.
And you'll cap out at some point. It's just a matter of where that will be. And this ties beautifully into this. So I'm going to read this out. This is actually from a Challenger Yone player. This is what he said to me. He said, so basically what we're talking about was that as you're learning Yone, so let's say you pick up Yone when you were in Diamond 2, and you'd been versing a lot of these average Victor players with like, their tethering is quite poor, their micro is not that good, kind of like what we saw before earlier in the guide with when I versed that pretty subpar Victor with very poor trading patterns and bad wave management. A lot of these matchups feel easy. And when you start to verse better and better and better players, the matchups will be different. So here, this is what he said. He said, I struggled a lot with that. We're talking about relearning matchups. He said, you kind of shit on weaker mage players with Yone, but then when you verse better players, the matchups change a lot and it shatters the way you approach the matchup. That's why he joined the MLA to get re-help, like learning the matchups when versing better players. It felt like it took me a long time to learn the matchups properly. I wasn't doing any fake movements or mixing up my gameplay. I had very linear ability usage. It was like Victor was pretty easy matchup, then I versed done and I got smashed. That's going to be the moral of the story for a lot of your guys' matchups, guys. So yes, it's good to have a baseline hypothesis, and you should only do, if what you're doing works at your rank, great, thumbs up, continue doing it. But as you get higher and higher and higher, the matchups will change. I initially thought Victor was very easy, even coming from the Victor's perspective. I'm a Victor player. Then when I started to verse very good mechanical Victors, it actually shattered my perception of the matchup. I'm like, holy shit, if he can actually bully me very hard levels 1 and 2, if he knows how to tether and avoid my Q3, I'm in a lot of trouble. That matchup actually gets very tricky very quickly. So guys, this is where I was sending this as a warning signal out for you experts, for people that have played a lot and climbing a lot with Yone, utilizing this guide. You are going to have to relearn matchups. Okay? Tempo usage, Jim.
Tempo usage. So as Yone, we have a lot of wave clear in our kit. And what I see in a lot of reviews that I do in the mid lane academy is that people use this wave clear as an excuse to perma push the lane and to get perma tempo. And having tempo is amazing on Yone because there's so many things that we can do. We can either get a lot of good vision with our E. We can get plates or raptors. Taking raptors is extremely easy because of our low cooldowns, high attack speed, kit. We can also roam pretty decently with R, and we can, of course, cheat a recall. But what we really got to understand is that we got to understand what we want to do and why we want to do it. So if we push, we got to have a very good reason of why we want to push, because we lose pressure on the enemy lane opponent.
Having intention with every single wave state is the goal. Like you said, and that's why Yone can be overwhelming. It's like, oh, I can shove and I can get raptors, shove and roam, shove and get plates, whatever the hell it might be. You've got so many options. But your job as you're going through the journey, guys, is to be like, okay, in this situation, I had a lot of options. I decided to shove and maybe get raptors. It's important you start to visualize in your reviews. Okay, if I actually held the wave here for a freeze instead, what would I have gotten? What could I have done instead? And so asking yourself these questions and being curious and weighing up the alternatives with what you can do, visualizing, oh, I've actually played for the freeze. Or if I didn't play for the freeze and play for pressure and help my jungler, what could have happened? These are very, very important questions, guys, because again, Yone has a lot of options.
So one thing that we can do on Yone is we can guide enemy melee champions. And the way we can do it is by our Q, of course. Our Q has longer range than a lot of melee champions have on their auto attacks. And we're also very mobile, so we have a very easy time dodging enemy skill shots. So to get this to extremely high skill cap level, we can actually kite out enemy melees like this Z in a very nice fashion and absolutely outplay them like this.
Oh man! Holy shit!
Yes, let's replay this. This is very dirty.
And you can do this into a lot of like Renekton's, basically any melee. Yep. I did this. I remember I did this to a Tryndamere all the time. Warwick. You can do it to a lot of these champions and utilize it. I love that how you utilize the CC there on the Q3 knockup to create space and walk back. That was absolutely beautiful. All right, so Yone, as you know, can also play top, guys, and this one's a little bit controversial. Now, for me personally, I did learn Yone top just so I can get as many Yone games as possible in. But there are very real dangers, but there are very real positives. So quickly skimming over this, guys. The dangers of playing Yone top is that it can feel different, right? The lane length, the type of the matchups, a lot of bruises, a lot of tanks. It can be very overwhelming if you're not very curious and you don't have a good process. If you're process oriented and you're very patient and you're willing to break down the matchups, thumbs up. If you're not confident in breaking down matchups, you don't have a good review process, I wouldn't recommend it. You might get too much top depending on your server and the rank you're at, so be careful of that. And if you are struggling in one lane, that can actually flow on to your other lane. So for example, let's say you're doing really well with Yone mid, but you're really struggling with Yone top, and you get maybe 2 Yone top games in your block of 3, that could flow on into your mid game, which is not good. So these are things to keep. Exactly. These are things that you need to be very careful of. But the positives, it does teach you to really learn matchups and get very granular, because it's all about matchup understanding in top lane. Like, you can't get bailed out as much by junglers as you do in mid lane. And because the lane length is very punishing, you need to get into the details. Does allow you to get more games in of net Yone games, forces you to get comfortable in many sorts of itemization, because in top, you're doing a lot more tank, right? You're doing a lot more balk into tank for the most part. So forces you to build that. And then ultimately, the team fighting and skirmishing is the same. So you get a lot more windows to improve your skirmishing and your team fighting. So totally up to you guys. I personally enjoyed the journey. I had a lot of fun with it. But again, feel that out for yourself. So what we've actually done, we've actually put together a lane guide for Yasuo. We've broken down exactly how to play this matchup. This is something we're experimenting with. We've never done this before. We actually created a PDF. The PDF to this lane guide is actually going to be in the description below. Feel free to download it. But what I would urge you guys, if you do download it, please leave us feedback in the comments below to say what you would like to have in it, what you don't like to have in it. If there's any feedback about the format, whatever, let us know. It's very important we get feedback for this. If it's something you guys enjoy and want to see more of, we could actually release more of these PDF documents from different matchups for you guys in the community. So let us know. Side note, Tim has gone ahead here and actually broken down 3 Yone matchups on his YouTube channel. So feel free to check out his YouTube channel where he breaks down these matchups if you want to get more granular on these 3 very tricky matchups, guys. Now, montages. Because Yone is a very micro intensive champion, if you main Aurelia, if you main any of these basically assassins, Zed, Fizz, LeBlanc, etc., you should watch montages. You're going to get value from watching montages because you can see what the champion is capable of. These are just a list of great Yone players to watch. Even though some of these players play top, for example, Zurikyo plays a lot of Yone top, you will still see some amazing stuff, and it will expand your view of the champion. Highly recommend spending time watching other people in queue. It will blow your mind and expand your horizons. Now we're getting into draft here again. Tim, walk us through this one a little bit.
So Yone is not always easy to pick and draft. He has a lot of good games, but he also has a lot of bad games. Of course, the bad games are avoidable through, for example, the tank build, but we can see if we want to pick Yone in a game based upon a few factors or not want to pick him also based upon a few factors. So signs that we want to pick Yone in draft, when it's a very good Yone game, is when the enemy has squishy champions, when we have an AP jungler, low hard CC in the enemies.
The low CC is a big one.
Yep.
Low CC is a big one for Yone. When I see hard CC over here, I am shitting myself.
Yep, exactly. Because low CC means that we can ult in and assassinate someone. Same with immobile enemy carries. Hard CC on our team. It makes it very easy to hit our ult. And also low damage comps because we don't want to get assassinated when we go ult in. And also access for side lane threats. So this main left section is especially focused on Yone's usually core build. Shield bow into IE makes it very easy to play. And then when we have a good Yone game, I wish the enemies good luck to actually play against us because it's really, really hard.
And a lot of this is the opposite, right? Things to avoid. A lot of CC, a lot of bruises that you can't beat in the side lane, like Jaxes and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Heavy ganking junglers that can really make your life miserable. Lack of setup. That's actually a very big one.
Yep.
I mean, look, I would say Yone is obviously more independent than, say, Yasuo. Yasuo requires a lot of setup. Yone maybe not so much, but still it helps. When you have multi-threat on your team, you got like more, and you got a lot of utility. You got Sejuani's and Zacs that are going in for you, creating space. It makes your life a hell of a lot easier.
Yep.
So this is a good way to break, a good framework to think about Yone and draft, guys. Read this over, have a think about it, and ultimately come up with your own little criteria for what you're looking for in draft. Right. Ultimately, every champion has counters. Some of you may be more sensitive to others, to certain things more than others. Play around with it, see what feels good and bad for you. Now, this one's very important. We're talking about understanding your skirmishers and your jungler. Okay, so we've got some good pairings, situational, unfavorable. Very simply put, like we've been talking a lot about, setup. These champions on the top right here, they provide setup for you. They create space. They have CC. They allow you, if they get that CC down, it allows you to land your E into Q3 into R, right? Very straightforward. Now, why are these situational in the middle here, Tim?
So these can be pretty good in certain games, but they can also be very hard in other games. So the reason why they can be hard is because they lack setup. They are AP, which is why it can be good, but they do lack setup. And sometimes we need to set up when the enemy has a lot of dashes or when they have flash up. It's very hard to get good skirmishes off, and you might just lose a skirmish if you go for it. Yeah.
So I was going to say one thing here. So let's visualize for a second. Let's say we're playing Yone into Ahri. These champions aren't really going to offer anything for us because Ahri's just going to kite out all of us. If we're versing an Ahri, we would get a lot more value from one of these champions that can create space, maybe burn the R, and then be frontline to block a lot of the damage. For example, but if we're versing an immobile mage, so we're versing a Victor, playing with any of these junglers would be great. So notice how it depends very much on them in the mid-jungle matchup and what champions into the game. They can be good because of the damage spread and dive and complement your dive, but they can also be very useless. So very, very something to keep an eye on. And then we've got these ones down the bottom, Tim.
Yep. So these are very high AD champions. They offer a very low setup and only very situationally with a good AP top laner. This can be good, but usually this is not what you need because this is exactly what Yone brings to the table as well. And it's a bit of overkill, and it's hard to play.
Exactly. So moving on, we've got some Yone drafts here we want to talk through. Tim, walk us through these ones.
So I want to analyze here and to understand why certain drafts are good Yone drafts and why certain drafts are bad Yone drafts. So I love this Yone draft right here. The reason why I love this is we got double AP topside. We got setup on our support, on our jungler, or on top lane, and on our AD carry. So it's extremely easy to land our ult here. Also, the enemy team offers us to go for a versatility of builds, depending on who's ahead and on who's behind. We can either go Bork into shield bow, we can go Bork into tank, we can build magic resist, we can build armor based on who's strong and who's weak. Ryze is not too much pressure in lane, so we can easily get towards our berserkers and then take over the lane by pressuring Ryze.
And they're not overly bursty.
Yep.
Right? They have a bit of CC, but they're not overly bursting. Because you've got other people creating space for you in team fights, the CCs, there's not too much of a problem in this game as well. So yeah, overall, this is actually it's just a solid Yone game. Not amazing, but pretty solid.
Yep.
This one here, looking very similar with the setup on top side. Double a lot of AP on top side, front line, and setup with the CC with the Morgana here as well. CC with the Ornn. A lot of dive, right? You've got Ornn going in. You've got Dinah going in. What jumps out to you about the enemy composition here?
So the enemy composition, it's pretty good in a way, but it's also pretty annoying in a way. Olaf just runs us down, and there's not much that we can do about it. Vi can point and click Ares and actually blow us up together with the burst from Victor and the spell sheets from Sivir. But if we get a good angle with good setup from the Ornn and the Diana, we can get a very good R, we can get a very good team fight going. And this is also, especially for ahead, pretty well playable in the side lane.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one. Like you said, I think it can get really bad and it can also be really good. Like, I think if Olaf runs over the Ornn, it could cause a lot of pressure. And if we don't get a lead in this, like if we don't like get something done in the mid jungle 2v2, it can be a bit sketchy. But I think here the biggest threat is Vi has lockdown, point and click CC, which is very, very dangerous. And then even Sivir spell shield can be quite annoying to block your Q3, which is also quite annoying as well. So it depends. If bot lane win the 2v2 and top minimizes and it kind of goes automatically into mid game without dying to any ganks, not too bad. So this one could go either way. I think it's a bit of a 50-50 Yone game. Would you agree?
Yep, it is.
Okay, what about this one?
Okay, so this one is pure pain. We got full AD team. Enemy team has Jax locked down with Rakan, Skarner. So it's extremely hard to play the side lane. It's extremely hard to play the team fights. And we're basically going to do very little damage too because of our team being full AD. So
and you've got a low threat jungle into the Victor as well. This is a dodge angle.
Yeah, I would dodge it. No, it's not.
This is a dodge angle. Get me the hell out of here. Like Jax, you're not going to beat in the side. Skarner lockdown, Rakan lockdown. Even Zeri's annoying because all the dashes as well. You can't let abilities. Get me out of that game. Get me out. So we're jumping into the Q&A. Let's pump this one out. So this one's actually from the Discord and the MLA from Fuserix. Any tips from playing from behind? I'm getting pretty comfortable when I'm even or ahead, but I'm consistently struggling quite a bit if I die and lose a lot of CS. Getting it back into the game feels really hard when I can't transition into 2-3 items. So, I mean, I'll kick this one off really quickly.
Okay.
Yes, Yone from behind is shit, right? So my first advice is I would really strongly suggest not getting behind and really focusing on why the hell are you behind in the first place. And there is no cookie cutter formula. There is no like secret Krabby Patty formula here. If you die in the early game and you get behind the curve, at the end of the day, you're a no utility item dependent champion. You're going to be very screwed either way. But it's all about, again, sucking it up, continue to minimize conservative wave states. If you die once, your main goal is to not die a single other time and try to keep your farm up, even at the sacrifice of letting your opponent roam or whatever. You got to get to your key spikes. Anything else you talk about here, Tim?
Yeah, there's two things that I want to emphasize. And what I do when I'm behind on Yone, there's, first of all, try to get to your spikes. Because at certain spikes, even when you're behind, you can sometimes be stronger than your opponent and maybe win in the side lane. So that's the first tip. And the second tip is that we got to really identify what our role is in the game and what we can do even when we're behind. So sometimes it's impossible to play the side lane because they got an extremely fat Jackson enemy team. What we then try to do is we try to hover in fog of war, try to help our team, maybe play for a win condition and get a good ult off. Even though we sack waves, even though we get even more behind in the 1v1, it's still one way to play the game.
And be more peel oriented in that situation if you've got secondary win cons. And then in that case, you'd be better off going a more maybe Bork into tank build. You're no way going to be relevant with shield bow into IE because it's going to take you a trillion years to get to IE, right? So you might as well just say, screw it. I'm going to peel, create space.
Exactly.
This one from Diarmud. Sorry if I mispronounced your name there. When should you be holding Q3 and when should you be using it aggressively, defensively, passively?
All right. So this is a very good question. So when do we use it aggressively? Let's start with that. We use it aggressively when we're on uptime. And the reason why we use it on uptime is because we want to get leads in lane. And with that lead, we can get good resets, good item spikes, and eventually kills and more pressure in the lane that leads to snowballing.
So all tied to the wave state. Uptime when the wave is on our side, that's when we have freedom to use our Q3 aggressively.
Yep. Exactly. So the reason why we would choose to use it defensively or passively is either when we're under pressure by the enemy team, or when we want to swap up our trading patterns and make the enemy guess what we're going to do. Instead of using it forward, we're going to use it backwards, or just to peel ourselves out.
Yeah, so I would say here it really depends on two things. If I were to summarize, I would say number one, wave state. If your wave's in, like Tim said, in a favorable position, you're in uptime, that is when we can trade aggressively because the wave's in a good spot. It's go time. We've ticked all the boxes. The other thing, it depends on how much peel or a reactive trading potential the enemy has. So let's say, again, you're versing a Talon that has all of his abilities up, or you're versing an Akali that has her E up. It's very difficult to use your E aggressively onto these champions because they can just use their abilities reactively and screw you. So it's a combination of the wave state and also a combination of how well can the enemy punish you for using your Q3 aggressively. The other thing to keep in mind is that you might not want to use your Q3 aggressively and actually want to use it passively when you don't want to touch the wave. You need to let the wave come out to you. If the wave is in the progress of coming back to you, it's in neutral state. You don't want to hit the wave. We talk a lot about this in the section where we go over the early lanes. I talk about the Victor matchup, and Tim talks about the Xerath matchup and all that. We go into that there. But it's all about wave states. It's all about wave states, and it's all about the potential for counter trades from the enemy. Next one from Assi High. Think keeping up with faster paced games could be a good bullet point. Faster paced games.
Yep. This instantly screams Zeal to me. So if there's a fast paced game, what we want to do after Berserkers, get our Zeal. Gives us more move speed to roam around the map. It gives us instant damage with the crit and with the more attack speed. So the faster the game pace, the faster we want to get Zeal, because this allows us to get those early skirmishes in better. And it's just way easier to play the game at that point.
And Bork. I'm a massive fan of Bork in faster paced games, for me personally. I mean, this is preference, and it is depending on the comp, obviously. But I found personally Bork is it's a better one item spiking item comparatively to shield bow. That ultimately is preference. But for me personally, when I'm in a fast-paced game, I like Bork. And in the preseason, that's one of the big reasons I've been preferring Bork, because the games were very fast-paced. That's another thing you can do. Next one from Jae-Ho Jung. How do you transition your lead into a victory as Yone? Sometimes I feel like the game starts to slowly slip out of my hands even when ahead. I'll kick this one off, Tim. This screams to me failure to identify your role in the composition, right? Anything that comes to translating leads, mid-game, when to group, when to split, it all ties into your role. And this ties into your build, right? So are you perceiving your identity in the game as a split pushing to victory? And they're very, you go on a more split pushing build, or are you perceiving your role to be that of a team fighting, skirmishing oriented champion, and you're complementing the rest of your team? So it really depends. Some games you are going to be the split pusher. Sometimes you're going to be a team fighter. What we would recommend, J-Ho, is to really think, okay, what looks better for Yone this game? Do we just win team fights and I should peel for other Fed members on my team? And we actually cover this in the mid-game section where Tim goes for a split push setup. He shows how he does that. He goes for a split push, killing the inhib. And one of my games where I play for shove and move and constantly group. We went different builds. The compositions were different. Some were more engage oriented. Yeah, sometimes the enemy had a lot of engage, things like that. But that's the way we would be thinking. First and foremost, it starts with identifying your role in the comp. The last piece of advice I'd give for this as well. Let's say you're translating your lead. Let's say you notice in the review that your team gets engaged upon and they all die because you're not there. Two scenarios pop in my head right now. I would say number one, okay, even if I grouped, it wouldn't have changed it. We still would have lost, in which case, okay, it is what it is. Or number two, oh, I actually should have grouped. This was and see how you could have seen that play happening. What were the signs the game was telling you that there was a team fight was going to happen, and how could you have been there? That's the way you got to think of it in the post-game review. Very important. Anything else you would add there, Tim?
Perfect. This is exactly with the build. It's great.
Yep. Beautiful. Next one from Rohan. I really like the minigames concept as you do, for example, in your old Echo guide. Also, depth of description of champ identity. Any minigames, Tim? What do you think?
Of course, Berserker Greaves. That's our biggest minigame in the game, because that's our first power spike, and any power spike after is a minigame for us because we are such a spike-oriented champion.
Yeah, the only difference between the Echo and Yone is that Echo can do that in a lot of different matchups. Yone can't, where it's like it depends on the matchup. Like I would say Echo's less matchup dependent than Yone in a way. There are some matchups where you can actually do a mini game, but not all of them. So I can't give you that general mini game that you can apply to every matchup. But like Tim said, really, really focus on keeping wave on your side and getting to that Berserker is at 1100 gold. Very, very important. Next one from Michael. Make sure to cover his weaknesses so I know how to exploit a Yone player. Maybe a replay analysis of getting dunked. Okay. Weaknesses, Tim. Let's list off some weaknesses of Yone.
So we got a player with strong wave management. He knows exactly what he's doing. For example, a good Victor, he will manage his wave correctly, 3-stack into you, pressure on a tower, play with the bounce, hold the wave, and you need to call your jungler or your support because you're already low and you're unable to crash the wave. That's a pain in the ass to play against a very strong wave management player. That's the main thing that I would say.
Yeah, so I would say how to exploit, like Tim said, wave management, making sure the wave is on your side. So stacking waves into bouncing, very, very important. You don't want the wave stuck on Yone's side. Okay, there's a few things about Yone. Yone, what we've been talking a lot about his power spikes. But he has some big power troughs, right? So Yone obviously spikes on Zerka Greaves. Great. There is this huge chasm in between Zerka Greaves and the next spike, right? Like we've got
massive.
Grand Canyon in here, right? So this Grand Canyon where you've got all the shitty components. You've got just a Vamp Scepter or a recurve bow or a pickaxe or, long swords and all this crap. This sucks, right? This is where Yone is really not that strong comparatively to a lot of other mages. Mages, on the other hand, spike on Sorks and Lost Chapter.
Yep.
Right? Or a lot of assassins spike only on Dirk and they don't need anything else. So what I would recommend is be careful on the level 6 and Berserker Greaves. But after that, relax. Your next base, that's when you can punish Yone, because that's when you're going to come back with a lot of damage. He doesn't have any defensives. He's very squishy. He hasn't got his core components yet. That's when he's very vulnerable. I would say as well, focus on when you're versing Yone, focus on walking back when his Q3 is up. So when Yone has Q3, don't walk forwards, walk backwards to create space, and then also try and also walk horizontally as well. So let's say we've got Yone here, and then we've got you here, and then Yone has the Q3. You want to create space, make sure there's space here, but you also kind of want to walk horizontally like this, because if you walk in a straight line, it can be quite easy, like we showed in the early review where I first had Victor, walks in a straight line. It's super easy for me to land the Q3. So it's actually harder when they do short, sharp clicks, moving side to side this way. A lot harder for me to, avoid that. Hit that Q3. Outside of that, it really comes down to just CC, holding CC, peeling back on your team and making sure that you're hyper aware of his R cooldown. And that's about it. So a lot of countering Yone it's the simple stuff. It's avoiding the Q3, playing on his power troughs, keeping good quality wave states. That's about it, really. So maybe at some point we can upload a video. Maybe Tim could do that, a countering Yone on his channel at some point.
I actually have one.
Oh, you actually have one?
I actually have one, yeah.
So, Michael, check out Tim's channel, Countering Yone. It's all there for you on a platter. Flyer Hash, sweet. What are some champs that have a similar playstyle to Yone? What would complement him in a champ pool? Well, the AP equivalent of Yone is actually Akali, in my opinion.
I agree.
Right? Spike oriented, cooldown oriented. R-oriented, ticks all the boxes. Akali makes the most sense. So basically, I would say Akali is the best one. But a lot of other AP assassins, like I think, depending what rank you are, if you're low elo, you could complement Yone with like a Diana or an Echo. If you're high relo, then yeah, I'd be more leaning towards the Akalis. Even Vex in a way, right? Vex can actually complement Yone. Not that he's like the same assassin, but dive oriented, right?
Yeah.
And it's all about positioning, utilizing fog of war.
Yeah, and I think the Vex actually complements a Yone in champion pool very well. It's not exactly the same champ, but it does some other stuff in the game, but it's very simple and similar.
All right, so thanks for watching, guys. There's a lot here. Hope you enjoyed the guide. We're going to be rounding this out with a VOD review of my own, and also a coaching session that I've done from the MLA, which I think ties together a lot of concepts. Again, please don't forget to check out Tim's channel, his YouTube, his TikTok in the description, the PDF in the description. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, subscribe there as well. Midlane Academy, if you're interested in coaching, also check out the description. Podcast, also in the description. Thanks for the support, guys, and hope you learned a thing or two.
I hope you guys enjoyed. It was awesome to do.
Okay, so what we're going to do here is go through a VOD using a lot of the concepts that we mentioned in the guide. This was a game I played as I was on one of my Smurfs as I was learning Yone, game 49, I believe. This one can be a bit of a tricky matchup. This guy wasn't overly good. I think it was maybe like a high diamond Kiana player. Really not that amazing though as a Kiana player, but it shows a lot of the concepts that we're talking about. So my hypothesis heading into this matchup is that you want to do some sort of a 3-stack into a tempo reset. So into champs like Fizz and Kiana specifically that have a very weak levels 1 to 2. I found that personally going for a 3-stack into a tempo reset is the best way to navigate it. Yeah, you can also just go for like a 2-stack and stay, and then kind of contest them off the bounce with the exhaust or something like that. But personally, I found there's no point. I'd rather get the tempo reset, go back for either an early cloth armor or an early dagger, and that way you just get an immediate advantage. And it also mitigates their effectiveness off the bounce. So as you can see, I'm trying not to hit the wave too much. I'm trying to make sure I'm last hitting. This is all relatively straightforward. So I go for a nice little 3-stack, just last hitting. Beautiful. Stack this wave in, and then I can start hitting the wave to get this wave in. The great thing about Yone into Kiana is that you can AoE her inside of the grass element. But she does have a lot of early burst, which does counter Yone because you can't build Tabis. Rip cannon. Beautiful. So I go for my little stack into a little bit of a reset here. Excellent early cloth armor. Kiana tries to play off the bounce. Now, this is a creative usage of my E you'll see in a second. I come here. She tries to hard off the bounce, but I use my E here just to get that little bit there, extra a little bit sooner. And then as a result, I'm able to pull the wave and then pull a freeze. This actually forces Kiana to stay. And now I've got a massive advantage. So looking for non-committal poke here with my W, being quite careful. Not a fan of my positioning there, get my bone plating proc for no reason. But yeah, now that I've got that extra cloth armor, which will, obviously the way armor works with flat pan, it's just very efficient. She's going to obviously get early Dirk. I'm able to look for nice little short trades with my E down the long lane. Nidalee comes through, a little bit of a drive-by. And now I've got that massive resource advantage. I've still got that pot in my back pocket. Kiana has no more pots. So now I'm again stacking the waves in. I'm not going to plan on stacking and resetting because I don't want to give her the free reset. I was going to bully her. Maybe I can look for some sort of a dive or something like that. But I know Nidalee's somewhere on that bot side. I go for an attempt at a short trade. Now, the reason I'm attempting to go for a short trade here is that if I can get her low enough, I might be able to go for some sort of a creative dive. This is what we're talking about in the guide and going for those creative EQ trades rather than E into Q3, mixing them up a little bit, alternating my patterns. But unfortunately, she tethers me and I kind of misuse my ability, mistime them. Stand my ground, utilize my exhaust here, and end up burning her flash. So this is a very common thing you can do into Kiana. A lot of people, what they do is when they verse Kiana, they see this grass queue and they basically bitch it. They walk back, they play super conservative, and then this actually allows Kiana to basically walk all the way to the back of the invisibility and then kind of disengage with the W. But here, I just walk into it. And now I can stand my ground and exhaust and even just, run her down. So beautiful, burn the flash. Does make me a little bit more susceptible because I don't have that exhaust, but I think that's more than worth it to burn the flash. Get my pot ticking. And now my mindset here is that I don't want to die. I know I'm versing a Nidalee, so, you know, I've got to be a little bit careful. Nidalee's not the highest threat champion, but I also know that Qiyana does not have water element, so she's got no gank setup at this point in time. And I'm inside a massive wave right now, so I don't really think I can die. So Qiyana comes through. I'm able to displace a bit of her damage with my Q, with my E, and then I'm able to kind of run her down and get a nice little kill there. And I knew that I couldn't die because I've got my ult here as well. If she went on me, I could have turned. On top of that, Qiyana had no flash, and on top of that, she didn't have water element to set up the gank. So that's all very straightforward, and that early lane was very replicable. This is something that I do majority of the time when I'm versing Qiyana. Now, you may ask, well, why am I going Vamp Scepter? We're in harder matchups, you know, that there is going to be a lot of heavy trading. I typically am quite conservative with my itemization, would prefer Vamp Scepter and early cloth armor. If you're feeling yourself and you're feeling quite confident, you could also go like a recurve bow. But for me, I want that refill. I want that sustain. I'm going to win the war of attrition, take those short trades. So I come back, use my E from a distance here so I can look for a short trade because she just wasted her E and her Q, WQ. Then out the wave a little bit. I'm actually not a fan of that. If I were to go back in time, I wouldn't do this because I want the wave to come to me. I want the wave on my side here. But when I hit that wave there, now I'm forced to shove it because I don't want to be stuck in this little awkward situation here. So I actually don't like that. That was a bit of a mistake for me. And I'm going to try and highlight some of my mistakes in this VOD as well because I don't play flawlessly, obviously. But Qiyana shoves it back. Get a little bit of sustain with my Vamp Scepter. Stack my Q3. Now, the one thing when you're versing Qiyana is that when she is 6, you want to ensure that you're keeping distance away from the pillars as well, so you don't get ultied. So if you stand in the middle of the lane here versus Qiyana, and you're not near these pillars, you can't really die because she won't land the R damage. Now here I've got to be a little bit careful. I don't know where the support is. I need to get some vision down, so I end up getting a ward down. Remember, valuing your life, guys. Valuing your life. So I'm actually not a fan of the way I've played these waves. I've played for a little bit of prior here when I think I should have played it slower with the waves. I think I should have let Qiyana shove into me. I had a bit of an XP advantage that I wasn't really able to use because of my poor wave management there. Remember, you know, uptime. I didn't really create much uptime here. So wave's in a very awkward position. Let's take a look at my E usage here. So I look for a short trade. She's hovering right next to the pillars. So I'm trying to stay in the middle of the lane so I don't get too, don't allow myself to get too threatened here. Stand my ground. Again, I've got my bone plating. I'm in the middle of the lane, so I know I can't die. And I've got my Q3 stacked up. I've got my R. She's forced to push me back. And now, because I've chunked her and I know that we're in an isolated 1v1, I can actually set up a dive if she stays. So, to be honest, this is a questionable R. Depends on how high you value getting the solo kill. I know that I can't really kill here. Maybe what I could have done is I maybe could have held my Q3 here, just autoed. In which case she shoves me back with R, then I Q3 flash or something. Maybe there's an argument to be made that I could have done that. But I'm pretty sure my intention, at least in the moment, was go for a chunk. And worst case scenario, she bases. I just shove the wave in and deny her a wave and a half. Or a wave. If she dies, she dies. So here in this situation, I think I could have played that better mechanically. But here I shove it in immediately, knowing that she's really low, and now I try to go for a dive. I remember I misplayed this a little bit. I thought I could get the E flash Q there, but she ends up getting the stealth off and end up missing the Q. But then I just walk up and finish her on the back end. And the only reason I was able to do this the whole time is because I knew Nidalee was bot. So we're stuck in the isolated 1v1. So I'm looking really good here. So, deny her, 2 waves here, shove out that wave, get a reset. Now I'm absolutely rock and rolling. I've got my Berserker Greaves. I'm killing it, 2-0. So here, Qiyana has a bit of tempo. I ping danger, exactly where the Qiyana's going to move. Unfortunately, my bot lane is incompetent. They die to that gank, so it is what it is. Got to adapt, move on, go and do what do I need to do next? So I just start hitting the tower, pressuring the tower. I have plenty of attack speed. I see Nidalee bot, so I know that I'm in the isolated lane. No one can stop me from taking plates. So I end up shoving this wave out, getting 2 plates. Now, I didn't factor in Karma coming here. So I remember here, I pressed my Q3, but not knowing Karma was coming. I thought it was only Kiana. So here I press Q3 and I'm like, oh shit, there's a karma. What I should have done here, I think, is I'll play it out first to show you what I did, and then I'll kind of talk about how I could have maybe optimized this one. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So yeah, basically I use my E to try and tether out that Karma W. I get pushed into the wall. I exhaust, but it's not enough. I think I miss a Q there, miss another Q, and then I die. So let's take a look at how I could have played this better. Well, first things first, I should obviously assume that the sport's going to roam. That's problem number one. I think what I should have done here is just simply take the W and then cancel the CC with my R. Right, Tim mentioned this in the ability usage section. So what I should do here is just take the W, boom, and then when the W goes through, I then R, and then I'll simultaneously get the damage off, and then I'll still have my E, because then I could actually use my E after my R to then move away from the wall and not get ulted into the wall. And then obviously me missing my Qs is obviously quite suboptimal. But yeah, I think there's some mechanical ways to play that one a little bit better. But I'm still in a pretty good position here. Game looks a little bit tough. It looks like top struggling, bot struggling, 7 to 10 at this stage. But I'm pretty confident in my 1v1 at this stage of the game. Shove out the wave. Now, 10 minutes of the game, there's no freezing anymore. You know, I'm playing for the map. I see the top's trying to get dove, so I make my way up top side. Not really able to get much here, so while I'm here, shove out the wave. End up going for some plates. And now I know that Akshan's going to come back here, so look what I do. I bush camp. And just wait over the edges. Because I know Akshan inevitably is going to come back to this wave. And I know that I have ulti. And if this guy exposes himself, I can solo kill him. Even though I'm not on my Borg. Okay? So here, Akshan comes, swings in, thinking, oh, Riven's mid, and Yone would have based. So all I'm able to do now is camp, be patient, knowing that he doesn't have E. Start with my R, get on top of him, stack up my Q3, hold, then E, hold, hold, hold. Notice how, again, I'm not using my... Notice how I'm not using my Q3, juicing the value out of my autos, making him panic, making him walk sideways. Because if I threw my Q3 and I missed it, I wouldn't be able to kill him. And I get a beautiful little pick there. Shove this one out while I'm there. Now I've got my Bork. Now I'm officially online. So at this stage, game's definitely not easy. If we take a look at the scoreboard here, we see bot lane going very back and forth. Top lane, not out of the game, but not amazing. Nidalee quite strong, but across the board, this is a pretty manageable game for a Yone, because I can get a lot of value from Iceborne in this game. Since I only have one AP, and the AP's a Nidalee, and Nidalee's not really a super threatening champion for Yone. So let's take a look at this. I don't exactly remember what happens here. So it looks like Kiana moves down the river. I do not have ult here, so this is a very tricky situation for me. Yeah, then I think I see Silas dying, so I just ping back, don't compensate, go back mid. Again, I'm the carry this game. Farming well, I've got a lot of gold, I've got a lot of plates. So I'm doing what is good for me this game. Hover topside. He ends up suiciding into the Silas. Shove out this wave while I'm here. Pressure the tower. Beautiful. So at this stage, as you can see, game, Nidalee's very strong. Bot lane's starting to struggle a little bit here, but I'm on my Bork spike. Working towards my Frostfire here, whatever the hell it's called, is always changing names. Iceborne Gauntlet, sorry. And the reason I'm building Iceborne this game is because look at how much AD they have. AD here, AD lethality, plenty of AD here. The only AP is coming from this and a little bit from Karma, I guess. And so I think I just get way too much value from the Iceborne. I can't really justify Jukshow this game. And the reason I'm not going into crit is because they just have a lot of burst with the Kiana, and I'd prefer to just get, if I feel like I have enough damage from the tank build and I can get that added durability, then it's a bonus. They're pretty squishy, so I just don't feel like I need crit. I feel like it's overkill. Plus our comp already has so much damage. So, now this is very, very important. So notice I'm walking on my way topside here. I know Akshan was just, so we go back here. I saw Akshan top. Now, obviously I'm on my way topside. I type in chat, hover me. Ideally, I want my Silas hovering me, not the behind Riven. And so what happens here is that I'm on my way top, about to match the Akshan, but then Akshan doesn't show on that wave top. So given that my AD carry support here is shoved up, and I know that Akshan should be theoretically on that wave, well, where's the only place he can be? That means he has to be roaming mid right now. So you'll see I start pivoting my pathing here, pinging danger, knowing that Akshan is most definitely going to be collapsing on mid. I see Nidalee is basically locked in at this point, and now I'm able to capitalize. Now, actually, I didn't end up committing. Maybe he got Krugs, but then I'm happy to be in this position regardless. There's no need for me to rush to be topside, and now I'm able to get this massive shutdown onto the Nidalee. Beautiful. Look at that. Now I've got that massive shutdown, 600 gold. Now I am rock and rolling. Go back top, shove this wave out, base, get my Iceborne. Now I'm very, very strong, working towards my Zeal. So, let's see what I do. You know, as I spoke about in the guide, you should see, ideally, a lot of grouping in this situation. This is a build where ideally you want to group a little bit more. So I drag into the next objective. I get to the next objective early. This is a very, very critical point. I cannot stress this enough, guys. All right, think about it. Dragon at this point is coming up in probably like, yeah, about, what is it, about 45 seconds from now. If I were to try and get a kill onto this Kai'Sa and only chunk her, that means I would not have my R for the team fight on Dragon. Unless this is an absolutely guaranteed kill, it's not worth it for me to go, because what's more important is playing for the team fight and playing for the objective. I've made this mistake many, many times where I think, oh yes, I got this nice little pick. I waste my R, or they just flash out of my R, and then, because Yone is such an ultimate line champion, I don't have R for the team fight, and then we have to give the Dragon. So unless it's a super, super high value R and you guarantee that it's going to get a kill, don't even go for it. So I don't even bother. I don't get baited in by the Rakan. I sit tight, I wait for my team, and just play for the next objective. And then I see a little bit of shenanigans topside. Looks like my Callisto and my Rakan, they're trying to steal the red buff or something. They get chunked out. Try to follow up on my Silas. They're coming in. Stay away from the wall. They line up for me, so I'm able to get that beautiful double knock up there. Clean up the Nidalee on the back end again. Easy. So this is all patience. It's poise. Notice how here as well, I didn't rush my combo. So I killed the Karma, pop back, stack my Q3 up again on the wave, getting ready. I don't R now because I know exactly where I am. Hold, walk back, overwhelm their mental stack, boom, turn with Q3 into R. But if I were to throw my R back here, I mean, they know where I am. They would have anticipated. They would have dodged it. Nidalee would have jumped out. Kiana would have, like, maybe W to the side. I'm trying to overwhelm the enemy's mental stack and not make it as linear. So I know that if I'm a Yone player and I'm in the broad day like this, showing everyone where I am, I can't just randomly send it with my R because they're just going to dodge it, guys. Right? I don't have the luxury of using Fog of War in this situation with that lion mindset that we mentioned. So I have to get a little bit more creative. So as a result, we're able to kind of clean up, get another kill on the back end here. So I'm 7-1, absolutely out of control. End up finishing up the Dragon here. They're trying to contest me. I can't really be killed here. Try to skewer the Dragon with the Silas. Beautiful. I walk in here purely to stack my Q up so I can actually get out of the fight. Lovely. So now I am on my 3 items. So at this stage, I'm the key carry. We're still actually surprisingly down in kills, but we've got 2 dragons. Shove and move. Notice here, my intention was to shove and move, but then I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get a camp here, see what this Kiana does, see if she thinks I'm being an idiot, which she thought I was. So I'm able to chase this Kiana. End up missing a Q there. Kill her anyway. They can't kill me at this stage because Nidalee does no way enough damage. Then play for Baron. And get Baron is basically GG here at this stage. I'll go over maybe one last fight here. I think all I do is I run it down mid here. Yeah, shove. I think I actually don't even group with the team because I think what happens is they get a pick here at some stage, so I don't even feel the need, and I think it's basically game over here. So, as you can see, guys, I'm probably not versing their best quality opponents. I'm not versing challenges here or anything. I think they're like high diamond or something. But it does show a lot of Yone fundamentals. Creative E usage, importance of valuing my own life, building correctly and playing in accordance to my build. Not doing linear Rs, getting to next objectives early, stacking my Q3 of minions and camps beforehand, holding waves in conservative states. All these things tying it together to create a beautiful, beautiful Yone game. Love this matchup. Very fun matchup. Very hard matchup. Okay.
Yeah, I felt so hard. I think it's one of the first games I played this matchup. So why this VOD? I sent this VOD because the laning phase was a bit difficult and I think I made some mistakes. I think you can maybe help me with thinking with some details about the Z matchup.
Yep.
But mostly I sent it for the mid and late game because I wasn't sure if I was doing it right. I felt like I got an advantage early. I got actually a pretty good advantage, but then I think I didn't push it enough. I'm not sure if I played too slow,
Okay.
and I could maybe play the team fights better and maybe play the map better.
Okay.
Because playing the map with champion like Victor, it's so easy for me, but with Yone, it felt so different, and I wasn't sure if I was doing it right, and
Okay.
I felt confused after reviewing it.
Okay. Yeah, you're spot on. Yone is a little bit more complicated than I mean, definitely more complicated than Victor. So these trades don't really benefit you all that much. So my mindset when I'm playing Yone into Zed is minimize. Allow myself to get shoved in. I want the wave on my side. I don't want a heavy trade. I just want to relax. I wouldn't do Qs like this. See how Zed's already shoved the wave like this? I'm happy. Like, I'm like, great,
Okay.
beautiful. The wave's going to be on my side. Because, again, when the wave is on your side, you've got an Elise. It's going to be very difficult for Zed to use the W aggressively. Because he's just going to be exposed, right? It has like a 25-second cooldown or something. So you don't want to match the wave clear. You can thin it, for sure, don't get me wrong. But you don't want to do this sort of shit where it's like you're trying to keep it neutral state and, you know, you're taking all these isolated Qs and trading autos. Like, this is not really what you want. Because when it turns level 3, you're going to get destroyed in trades. Versus a good Zed.
Yeah.
So yeah, notice how you're shoving into Zed now. This is worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Alright, so we get level 2. Still not crash. We're trying to get the wave in again. I don't think I would go level... if I were to get level 2 first, I would probably go W level 2, not E. Just for poke and minimization of some trades, but okay. And still the wave's in a bit of an awkward position. You end up taking a tower hit for this one. You got to remember this set has 3 health pots as well.
Yeah,
So
that's what I think I didn't keep in mind.
Yeah, so it's not like you're really going to be able to get that much done here. Plus, he doesn't need a lot of gold to base on because he's going to go for an early Dirk. And right now, you're just so exposed. Like, look at you right now. Look at your position in the lane. He's getting WEQ'd. Zed has no fear at all to use WEQ. And yeah, you just get lucky that Rammus goes top and doesn't come mid, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw him on Raptors and my mind was he's going at top. But yeah, it could have been a 50-50. He went mid.
He could have
right.
adapted. Okay, I don't mind the reactive E usage, but as you can see, he kind of just stat checks you. And trading flash for flash is not worth it at all. So this is the problem with playing versus Zed. He just, you know, if you go into him like this, he can... Okay, there's a few little things. Number one, he actually held his Q really nicely. So here, I would E as well. But because he held his Q, I wouldn't walk up to him linearly like this. Because now what you've done is you've perfectly sandwiched yourself in between him and the shadow, which allows him to get that beautiful double shuriken right now, right? So what I would do is I would actually E to the side. I would E this way. So then I can maximize my distance from him and the shadow, and then make it hard for him to land the shurikens. And the other thing here is because you go into him, you actually get into auto range. So look at that. Now he's able to auto QE. See that?
Yeah.
Look at that, auto QE. You're going to get absolutely annihilated like this. So notice how, yeah, he just stat checks you. His autos do more damage. His abilities do more damage. It's just very difficult. So yeah, my mindset is hold wave on my side, use E somewhat reactively, go back for an early maybe cloth armor reset or something like that. And
so would you go Doran's Shield or Blade?
Doran Shield.
Okay.
Doran Shield.
And I went with, I think I went with Second Wind.
Yeah, that's good. Second wind's good.
Okay.
Second wind, and then I'll go back for like an early cloth armor refill with TP, something like that. I don't like going Berserker Riz Rush into this matchup. You only either want to go Vam Scepter, or you want to go like Cloth Armor into like attack speed. The reason this is not a good first item is because you need the sustain or the durability. You need either lifesteal or you need durability. Because now you have no armor, you have no sustain, you have no pots. You're in massive trouble right now. If this Zed was good, you're in a huge trouble. Because now, if he actually based on his Dirk instead of the triple longsword, you're just gonna get completely fucked. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, definitely does.
But you did the right thing with thinning and pulling. This is better. But now, look, because you tried to pull the wave, you look at your HP. Now you're half HP.
Yeah. And I can't.
Look at that.
And I get back HP up. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're in big trouble here. Oh no. So notice how when you're not recognizing that. I mean, there's two things here. Number one, you shouldn't even you can't be trading into Zed like this because the minion wave. Number two, if you get into him like this, and if you stay in combat like this, he can auto EU like that, which absolutely annihilates you. And then number two, he could have easily popped over this Q3 with his W.
Yeah, and then I do nothing.
Yeah, so it was never really going to work for you either way. And now you're too low to cash his under tower, and now you're getting zoned, and you get bailed out by your jungler. So,
yeah, my mind there was to get over 6, but I needed one more minion.
Yeah.
And Q3 into R him instantly,
Right,
but yeah,
right.
that didn't go well. Yeah, so I should minimize more in this matchup.
Yep, you need to be way more minimizing, focusing on avoiding those WQs like that, focusing on conservative wave states. Hence why the TP is really good, because then you're going to take a bad trade at some point in the early lane, you reset, you come back, you TP. Now we do have the refill, which is going to make your life a little bit easier, but we still are missing that cloth armor. Unfortunately, missed the cannon. Okay, looks like Zed hovered top side, so we can quickly sneak this wave out and get it bouncing back to us. Yep, that's good. That was really good. Found a window to shove the wave in between. Yeah, look, I think what I would have done is I think I would have E'd to walk up, and then I would have Q'd and tried to get my Q3 stacking. Then when he R's me, I would instantly R behind me, and then I could R, and then I could auto Q3. You wouldn't kill him, but that way he would be able to damage you way less. But the problem here is that you didn't stack your Q3 and you used your R to gap close to the point where now you don't have Q3 coming out of the ult, and you don't have R coming out of the ult, so he can land all his damage. See that?
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
So you could have actually chain CC'd quite nicely there. Yep, and there's that damage with the Dirk.
So I should have E'd into Q stacking and just wait for him to R me.
Yep, and then you R him.
But wouldn't I go back?
Yeah, you won't kill him, right? So what would happen is that you get out, you would Q, auto Q, and then you would have Q3, then he R's you, then you R, and then he pops up, then you Q3, then you pop back. So it'd be like a nice little... He wouldn't really get any damage, but then you would get a nice bit of chunk of damage and you would pop back.
And I waste his ult, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Trading off R, which is actually quite good for you. Because you're minimizing his threat onto you and you can just elongate the lane phase. You just want this lane phase. You just want to just not die and just minimize and get to your key items.
Okay.
Alright, there's the...
And should I go Blade against him?
Yeah, so what I would build this game is I would go, like I said, sit on the early cloth armor, and then I would go Blade into Iceborne Gauntlet in this game, or the Frostfire, whatever it's called.
That's what I want.
Yeah, that's the right build.
Okay.
Because remember, Shield Bow doesn't really do much into these champions because they can build Serpent's Fang as well. So it's a bit of a bait item. Plus, it's just, it just doesn't really spike that early, and it doesn't synergize as well with the tank items. Okay, not bad. We've got TP coming up in 24 seconds, so even if we take a bad trade here, we can always just go for a sneaky reset.
Yeah, I actually feel bad, not with Zed only, but with other matchups as well. I feel bad playing on the tower with Yone. I don't know why it feels so hard sometimes.
I don't really mind it. I think Yone is a good under tower because you can. I mean, you've got such low cooldowns.
I'm just not used to playing melee champions. I think
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it'll just take time, I think. How many games how many games deep are you?
In Yone,
Yeah.
I think it's 23 or 24 right now.
Okay, so you're very new, that's right. So you're very early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he takes a tower hit, you see the go angle. Yeah, so not too bad. Not too bad at all. Nice little opportunistic kill. Okay. Come back. TP. Nice. Okay. So we've stabilized the game a little bit here. Get some defensive wards out. I like it. Again, we're still in a massive power trough. This is where you need to really focus and keep your farm up and not force any dumb plays. So you can go for plays, but you need to be really, really conservative. This is where I make, like straight up, this is where I would say I make my most errors. All right, so what happens, right?
Yep.
You're basically, you're feeling cocky. You're feeling confident. You're like, yeah, I'm farming pretty well. You know, I'm 2-0. I've got my Berserker Greaves. And you're starting to feel a little bit cocky or a little bit confident, right? You're like, oh, okay, I should be strong right now. Because on any
Ego
other
is the
champion,
enemy.
yeah, well, on any other champion, you would be really strong. Like, imagine if you're a 2-0 Victor here or something, or a 2-0 Silas.
Yeah.
Like, you would feel
I
really
would
strong.
stomp on them.
Yeah, that's right. But you're actually still really weak comparatively. You're versing a Rammus, which is a hard counter to Yone. You're versing armor stackers, Tarby stackers. This guy's got shield bow, and this guy's already got Eclipse. You're in not a good position.
Yeah.
Right? So right now, okay, sure, you can adapt to chaos around you, and you can complement your team, but it needs to be done with an ultra conservative mentality. You have no sumps, you have no Bork, you have no ult. So make of that as you wish, right? It's not about, like, right now your main focus should be staying alive and farming. So what I would actually probably prefer to do right now is I would actually probably prefer to stay mid, keep eyes on the Z, just danger ping, and just keep shoving and getting my items. I've made this mistake so many times where I feel cocky and I die on this power trough here. Not good. So yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does.
It's just a giant bait.
I think it's just right. It's a bait until I get maybe Bork, and even then I just have to stay on the side, not necessarily roam.
Yeah, you need 2 items this game to be pretty relevant. I mean, look, at Bork you're a champion. Don't get me wrong, but this game, because the champs you're versing are all counter you, like Rammus and Zed and all that. And this is actually an incredibly hard Yone game, by the way. Just like every champion. Hard CC, peel. Hard CC, peel. Burst, lethality, hard armor, peel. This is actually basically as hard as a Yone game gets. If they just had like an AP top or something, if they had maybe like a, I don't know, maybe they had like a tank top or something, like a hardcore tank top that had mixed damage, or maybe they had like a Jax top, that would make it harder. But this is basically as hard as it gets. So just letting you know.
Okay. I just feel very confused from now on. I feel like everything I did was like the ideas I had from playing mid lane and actually playing mid game.
Right.
But it did not feel enough. Like I just felt powerless most of the game.
And I think one of the big problems here is that why the hell do we have Sweeper? We're not, Sweeper's good when you're dominating your opponent and you're shoving and roaming. Sweeper's not good when you're in a conservative minimizing mindset. I would either have yellow trinket or blue trinket. Because right now you have no side to lean onto. And now look at this. As a result of having no side to lean onto, you're shoving, and then Darius just roams and punishes you. Pretty straightforward. That could have easily been a Rammus. And again, it's very difficult for us to kill here. But we end up getting it. Lovely, nice opportunistic kill. We have got our bought golden base. Nice. Again, another. So you're getting a lot of lucky kills. I mean,
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I felt this game was pure luck, and I wasn't sure what I need to do to make it not luck, because
yeah,
it's not gonna
yeah,
be every game like this.
yeah. That's right. So, I mean, it's not really like. I mean, it's luck in the sense that like ash arrows and stuff, but I mean, it's not like you capitalize on them, which were good. So we need a reset. Unfortunately, you've messed up your build a little bit because you've got that random longsword there. You need to just be building straight armor here. And now working towards your Iceborne. I think I would get the cloth armor rather than the sheen here because again you just need the durability. Laner summons get swapped up. So my mindset at this stage of the game, again, just to be ultra clear, is that I know that again I'm still incredibly squishy. I don't even win the 1v1 versus Zed. Still, even though you're 5-1, you don't even win. You still lose. So you don't do well into anyone still. So my mindset here is, okay, I need to get to my Iceborne and I need to continue to farm and play with my Aatrox and play with my Elise whenever I can. But if I'm by myself, then I'm just trying to minimize. If my Elise is nearby, then, I might be able to do something. Yep, so that's okay because Elise is here. But if you were making that sort of play with Elise not there, then you'd be in trouble. Yep, use this as an opportunity to farm. Lovely. Shove this one out. Got TP in 30 seconds. Rift is coming up. I don't know if you guys... Aatrox is quite strong.
I've heard that Varus could destroy us.
Yeah, you guys probably don't even win the fight anyway. Varus is on 2 items.
I know how much damage Varus deals now. He destroys us.
Yeah. Alright, for some reason they give you guys the Rift. Looks like your team wants to siege mid. We TP in.
I wasn't sure if this was a good TP. It ended up well, but I'm not sure.
Well, one thing you got to remember is that, number one, you're not really the main win condition, right? Your champion, like I said many times in this game, is pretty useless. Like, even if you're fed, your champion's useless. So the whole point of the tank build is 2 parts. Number one, so you can actually survive, right? And not get one shot every fight. But more importantly, number 2, to act as a facilitator and create space. So you're like a secondary carry that's going to be able to create space for other people on your team. Now, because your team is mid, you actually have no choice. Whether or not this is a good or bad fight, you have no choice because it is a fight. And because you can't make up the difference in the back end, you have to fight. You know what I mean? Because Aatrox and Elise are your win conditions. You have to fight here. This is your identity.
I have to help them.
You have to help because in another scenario where you do really well into their composition and you feel like this is a bad fight, that would be okay to not TP because then it's like, well, I can carry in mid game anyway. You can't carry in mid game here.
Yeah, that's what makes the difference from my LeBlanc and Victor. I feel like I can win the game, but
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, my only criticism here is that I think here you should have ER'd, and then that way you don't have to fully commit. You can be a little bit more non-committal and like kind of peel back. But because like I think Rammus could have maybe peeled back onto you here and maybe killed you. But outside of that, not too bad. You and Aatrox were able to slaughter the back line. Well done. Nice little R. Beautiful, and it leads to another dragon. So this is great. That was actually an incredibly game-winning play right there because you get 2 towers, gives you a shit ton of gold. You get a dragon, which is going to stall out the game even longer. Really, really good. Now, finally,
but even now, it still takes 20 minutes to win. That's what I feel frustrated about because I feel like I could have done something from this point onwards.
Well, yeah, it's it's still a hard game because you're facilitating like your bot lane. You're facilitating a behind Ashe, which is not optimal. Okay. And so your only win cons is an Elise, which isn't really a carry jungler. It's not like it's an Eve or a Diana or something. And then you got an Aatrox, which can only do so much when they're stacking armor. So it's still, don't get me wrong, a hard game. Okay. So same thing though. Your tank build, you want to be shoving and grouping for team fights with your team. This is not a split push game. The enemy have too much engage. You want to be shoving and moving and being there with your team.
Do you think I should have done the golems? I should have just pushed as fast as I can.
Well, in this case, because Varus is actually dead, I think it's actually fine to get Krugs. Don't skip. And nowadays, I very rarely skip Krugs here because they're so fast to get comparatively.
Yeah.
By the way, just a side note, typically if I don't really need the armor, or I don't really need the Iceborne yet, I'll actually get Zeal first because you actually don't really do much damage until you have Zeal. So for me in this game, because you really did need the durability, I think it's fine to rush the tank item. But you need Zeal here now. Like you need to get your Zeal ASAP.
I think I do take the Zeal in the next back.
Okay. So this is fine because Zed's dead. And I don't think anything's going to happen right now. I think this is completely fine. Yep, that's fine. But after this is where I'm starting to shove and move. Yep, this is where I want to be, like, kind of hovering. Okay, we can kind of go.
One question, like 15 seconds before. Do you think that E on Z was too optimistic? Like, I wanted to like get even a small trade. Do I think I beat him now? Like here, I felt stronger than him.
Yeah, you're fine now. At Iceborne, you're all good. Because remember the Iceborne also reduces damage by like you reduce the damage by like 20% or some shit, right? Something like that. So it's fine. At this point, you're quite flexible. Okay, I would probably let's just see here. So Aatrox is dead. Okay, dragon coming up in 2. This is fine. And then shove and move. I mean, you could also TP in. Looks like your team's actually looking to do a Baron or something. I don't like this. Purely because, I don't know, for me, I think I would want to have my R for the team fight with my team. Because now, without R, it's quite difficult to team fight. Okay. Ends up working out. So what's the most important thing here is the mindset. The mindset of, you know, if you can, creating some sort of a man advantage by shoving and moving or shoving and TPing and making Zed react inside.
Yeah, that was my idea. That's why I even told them to start it. But I was thinking I kill Zed and ITP. But yeah, actually keeping my R was a good idea.
The thing is that Zed's not going to be at the fight anyway, and he's kind of useless, and you need your R to kill the Varus, in my opinion. So like I don't know. I feel like it's okay. It's not terrible, but I would prefer to hold the R in this game anyway. But in other games, chunking the side laner is completely fine. I think here you probably could have just done the Baron and make them come to you. Yep. Now, Yone, by the way, is very good at keeping junglers out of the pit because you can E over like this. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I did that.
This is really good. As you can see, you're killing yourself with the
Pretty
Rammus.
much. The fun thing is that if in the taunt when Rammus taunts you, it looks like you hit him with the same blade, and I thought you dealt the same damage, like only AD or half AD, half AP. But you switch between the weapons.
Oh, really?
Even if the animation looks like you hit it with the same one.
Yeah, and now the game at this point is pretty straightforward. Again, as long as you grip, you can't really lose a team fight because you're so far ahead. You, Elise, and Aatrox are going to create too much space. And because he's an immobile AD carry, as long as you just dive bomb him, it should be okay. I would never 1-3-1 like this, though. Like, I would really make sure I'm with my team and we're 4-1ing at minimum. But I would actually probably 5-0 like this. This is good.
Okay. So I think I should have just, like, shove and move, not stay in the side anymore.
I'm actually worried that, again, I'm just so worried that like a fight will break out without you, and I just really want to be there.
Yeah, that was my thought process in the game as well. But then I remember that you told me a bit about trying to stay more in the side. And I was like, maybe I can pressure more like this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure, so I should go with my team now.
I think it's just a feeling. It's like they have a lot of engage, right? The pick, they have like the Rammus and Renata. I don't know. It just feels like to me something's gonna happen. Just with the way it's the way everyone's
I know.
Like I would just stay mid because especially with this build, like you're really you need to be with the team and creating space and just team fighting. This is a team fight build.
Okay, I know, but my feeling was half between.
Yeah.
I know it's gonna start a fight, but the second time I felt like I don't know how much I can help them. I was thinking that Varus destroys me. Like how this happened here.
So
If
I
I
think
don't,
what I would do is I would now note this down as a tendency. It's like, okay, I went to the side once, my team died. Okay, well, that means from now on, I can't do this. So I would now adjust my macro from this point onwards.
Mhm.
That's it. So
Okay.
now, obviously, you know, you can't, there's no point fighting here because your Ashe and your Sona are dead. So there's not really much you can do here. And again, you can't, who are you creating space for? Right? You're creating space for no one. Then they're not even hitting anyone, so your backline's not even hit. I mean, your Elise and your Aatrox aren't even hitting anyone. You're not creating space for anyone. You've got no multi-threat dives. Not like Elise and Aatrox are dive bombing the Varus. This is a complete waste of time. This is not the identity of this build.
Yeah.
Right? You got to remember when you're playing this build, you have very little burst. You're not bursting anyone. And all you're doing right now is overextending yourself. You're creating space for no one, and then you get chain CC'd and you die. And that's why I said this is why Yone in this game is hard, and you're purely predicated on creating space for your team. That's why, because they have so much CC and peel. Rammus Taunt, Renata Q, Varus R, you know, there's all this crap that you have to get through. So in this case, it looks like it kind of works, but very, very sketchy.
Yeah, I wasn't creating space for anyone. I was playing by myself.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
I guess that was not in my mentality. I wasn't thinking that I have to pay for the team as much.
And I think as for build wise, I would go either. I think I would probably go Death Dance.
I went Infinity Distance. Well, the last 2 items.
I think I would go.
Order.
Yeah, I think I would go. Definitely Death Dance, but I don't know about IE. I don't know, but it's ultimately preference. It's if you want damage, you can go IE. It depends if you feel like you need the damage, but definitely Death Dance.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay, we are with the Aatrox here, so it's not terrible. A bit weird. Everyone all over the place.
Yeah, it was a very pre-season-ish game.
Yeah, and as long as we're getting to the fight nice and early, same thing, right? With the R. Like, I mean, you get the kill, which is good, but you might not have R for this team fight. And that Varus is who I would be wanting to ult. Okay. So a bit of a crazy TP. Ends up working out well. They look like they're very scared of you. Good. Good. This is good peeling. Good creating space there. Well done. So you get the point. See the lens I'm looking at this whole game through? I'm looking at, like, okay, who am I creating space for? Like, where is my team? You know, it's all about creating multi-threat, wasting their time. I mean, obviously that was just completely ridiculous, but...
Yeah, I was too much trying to make plays. I didn't really think about... I didn't put myself in the shoes of, yes, I need to peel for my team.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I go Iceborne, I don't die, so I can kill them. That was my thought process.
Yeah.
Legit.
And does that all make sense from here on?
Yeah, definitely does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I misjudged my identity this game.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. I think you misjudged your mid-game identity. For the most part, you did an alright job. But yeah, you had to realize that you had to play for team fights with the Elise and the Aatrox and probably dive bomb this guy and create, you know, make it such that Aatrox and Elise can get access onto the Varus. You had to do that. I mean, you did a good job of creating man advantage by chunking out the Zed inside. You just got to find that tightrope between, okay, how value is my R for the team fight versus, okay, is this guy a major threat? And if I remove him from the game, then do we win the fight anyway? That's ultimately on you, right? And it's a tough call to make. But the main takeaways were, number one, your interpretation of the early game matchup. Obviously, you didn't really have the right interpretation of the matchup and the trading patterns and the mindset. And then obviously, the mid-game, you know, grouping and identifying your role in fights. So there's a lot here to unpack, you know, and for me, given how early are you on in your journey, I wouldn't worry too much about the mid-game. Right? You said you were like 25-ish games in. I would be more so focusing on the consistency of my early game. And because the way you navigated that entire first 10, 12 minutes, that's not going to lead to consistency. so
Okay.
I would probably more so if I were you focus on my matchup understanding, ensuring that I'm having good quality. I have good quality hypothesis in my matchups, working on my trading patterns, my mindset in the early lane, etc. And then I'm planting this seed in here about it's good to like get a baseline understanding of your mindset with a build, but this is quite complex. This is a hard Yone game holistically, and I wouldn't expect you to know how to navigate this game perfectly with how little games you've played. So don't worry too much about that yet. I would again the first 12 minutes consistency is where I'd be directing my attention.
Okay.
Any other questions about this one?
One more question. This is my Smurf, and I think it's about D2, D1. Should I try to move and start playing Yone on my main account? Because I haven't played him on my main yet.
What rank's your main right now?
I think it's this D2 because he decayed, but I'm pretty much playing Masters 200, 300 LP.
I would give it another maybe 10 games on your Smurf.
Okay.
I'd say give it another 10 games and then go on to your main. Yeah.
Okay.